Hi there. Tonight we slip into the sultry shadows of ancient China, where silk curtains sway in a candlelit bedroom, and the air hums with whispers of desire and duty. You're standing in a Han Dynasty courtyard, the scent of jasmine curling. Around you, the moon casting soft glows on tiled roofs as a couple's laughter spills from behind a lacquered screen. This isn't the China of dragon robes and warlords. It's the intimate dance of love, lust, and power, where every touch was shaped by rules older than the Great Wall. Honestly, with Confucian codes and palace intrigues, you probably won't survive this unscathed. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and the local time. I'm curious where you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in Luoyang, a bustling capital of the Han Dynasty, around 100 CE, where the streets buzz with silk merchants and ox carts, but the real drama unfolds behind closed doors. Mainstream history tells us that sex in ancient China was tightly woven into social order, governed by Confucian ideals that prized duty, family, and hierarchy over passion. You're peeking into a merchant's home, its wooden beams carved with cranes where a couple prepares for bed, their movements cautious, as if the ancestors' spirits are watching. Every act here, love, marriage, even desire, is a thread in the fabric of clan honor, and you're feeling the weight of eyes you can't see. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Han couples burned bedroom incense made from crushed deer antler, believing its musky smoke stoked passion and pleased the gods. You're catching a whiff of it now, sharp and strange, curling from a bronze burner, and you're wondering if it's an aphrodisiac or just a fancy air freshener. Historians still argue whether this was a romantic ritual or a nod to fertility. Cults, but you're betting it's a bit of both, especially when the wife's coy smile suggests it's working. You're fanning the smoke away, wishing for a breeze, and you're praying the gods don't judge your own bedroom habits too harshly. The room's a study in contrasts. You're noticing the silk sheets, smooth as water, a luxury that screams wealth. But the couple's whispers are hushed, bound by rules that make your modern heart chafe. The man, a silk trader, speaks of duty to his lineage, while his wife, her hair pinned with jade, nods, her eyes hinting at unspoken wants. You're sensing the tension. Love's here, but it's tangled in expectations, like navigating a palace full of spies. The church's grip in medieval Europe, with its sin-soaked sermons, feels worlds away. Here, it's Confucius, not Christ, who looms, demanding harmony over lust. You're thinking of those medieval bedchambers where passion was a gamble. Here, it's a contract, and you're curious how they find room for desire. The nights. Rhythm is deliberate. You're watching the wife pour tea, a ritual as precise as a dance, her hands steady, but her glance bold, a flicker of flirtation that'd make a medieval troubadour blush. The man responds, his touch light but deliberate, and you're catching the unspoken rules. Intimacy's allowed, but only within the lines of propriety. You're feeling the room's warmth, the incense's haze, and you're wondering how they balance heart and honor in a world where a misstep could shame a clan. Joke number 1, you thought a bad Tinder date was pressure? Try wooing with your ancestors' ghosts critiquing your every move. The broader world shapes this bed. You're hearing distant gongs, signaling the city's curfew, a reminder of the emperor's reach, whose own bedroom, as we'll see, was a battlefield of power and pleasure. Peasants, unlike this merchant pair, snatch love in haylofts there, lives too lean for silk or incense, but the rules are the same. Family first, desire second. You're thinking of the marketplace where matchmakers hawk brides like grain, and you're realizing sex here isn't just personal, it's political, a thread tying clans, dynasties, even the cosmos. You're stepping back, the couples, silhouettes blurring behind the screen, and you're sensing the layers of this world, where every kiss carries a weight heavier than jade. The night deepens, and you're left outside, the courtyard's jasmine fading, the couple's whispers gone. You're carrying the hum of their world, silk, duty, desire, a pulse that beats through ancient China's heart. The rules are strict, the stakes high, but there's a spark in their glances that defies the script, a hint of what's to come. You're ready to peel back more layers, to see how love and lust danced in palaces and peasant huts, a story as messy and human as any today. You're slipping through the narrow streets of Luoyang, the Han dynasty's capital, humming around you, the scent of street-side noodle broth mixing with the faint musk of that bedroom incense from last night's merchant couple. The city's alive with clattering carts and silk-robed scholars, but behind every door, love and lust bow to Confucian rules, a rigid code that cages passion tighter than a lacquered box. You're weaving past a family shrine, its candles flickering for ancestors who seem to watch every step, as you delve into the strict social norms that shaped intimacy in ancient China, where duty trumps desire and every bedroom act is a family affair. Mainstream history tells us that Confucianism, the backbone of Han society, enforced a hierarchy that governed sex and marriage, prioritizing family lineage, social order, and filial piety over personal romance. You're standing outside a scholar's home where a young man betrothed to a girl he's never met practices calligraphy, his brushstrokes steady but his jaw tight with unspoken frustration. The rules are clear. Marry to continue the clan, produce sons to honor the ancestors and keep passion in check, lest it disrupt harmony. You're feeling the weight of those invisible chains, the air heavy with obligation, and you're wondering how love finds a crack to slip through. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some families hung harmony charms, bamboo strips etched with Confucian sayings above the marital bed, believing they'd keep lust orderly and ensure dutiful heirs. You're spotting one dangling in the scholar's window, its faded ink promising balance in all things, and you're chuckling, imagining it as a bedroom mood killer. Historians still argue whether these charms were sincere piety or a way to nag couples into compliance, but you're betting it's both, especially when the scholar's sigh suggests he'd rather burn it. You're brushing past the charm, its clack faint, and you're hoping your own love life's less scripted. The scholar's world is a maze of rules. You're watching him bow to his father, a stern man in grey robes who lectures on the bride's virtues, her weaving skills, her modesty, not her smile. You're sensing the son's resignation, his eyes drifting to a street musician's flute, as if longing for a freer tune. Confucianism demands he marry within his class, cementing alliances, and you're catching whispers of matchmakers sealing the deal, their ledgers colder than a winter stream. You're thinking of that merchant couple's silk-sheeted tension, where desire danced with duty. Here, duty's the only dancer, and you're feeling the chill of a life where love's an afterthought. Joke number one, you thought family dinners were awkward. Try a betrothal where your dad picks your wife based on her embroidery stats. The rules aren't just personal, they're cosmic. You're hearing a street philosopher drone about yin and yang, how a man's yang, active, hot, and a woman's yin, passive, cool, must align in the bedroom for societal balance. It's not just about pleasure, it's about keeping the universe spinning right, and you're rolling your eyes, wondering if the stars care about who's kissing who. The churches. Medieval grip with its hellfire sermons feels distant. Here, it's ancestral spirits and cosmic order that judge. And you're noticing the scholar's mother burn offerings at the shrine, praying for a son to keep the family's yang strong. You're sidestepping the smoke, its acrid bite sharp, and you're curious how anyone finds room for passion under this celestial spotlight. The street's a mirror of these norms. You're passing a young woman, her face veiled, escorted by a chaperone, her steps small as if bound by invisible ropes. She's likely betrothed, her bedroom future mapped by parents, not heart. And you're sensing her quiet rebellion in a stolen glance at a passing poet. You're thinking of the marketplace where matchmakers hawk brides like silk, and you're realizing sex here is a public script. Wives for heirs, concubines for pleasure, lovers only in secret. You're feeling the town's pulse, a rhythm of duty over desire, and you're wondering how the scholar will navigate his wedding night with ancestors and charms watching. The broader world reinforces the cage. You're hearing gongs from the imperial palace, where the emperor's harem, as we'll see, juggles lust and politics under the same Confucian yoke. Peasants, unlike this scholar, snatch love in fields, but their marriages, too, serve family, not heart, their beds as bound by duty as any silk-sheeted chamber. You're stepping past a cart of radishes, the vendors shout a burst of life, and you're carrying the scholar's tension, a knot of rules and wants. The Confucian code is iron, but there's a spark in that veiled girl's glance, a hint of defiance that promises more stories to come. Joke number 2. Forget dating apps. Try finding love when your matchmaker's got a checklist from your great-grandpa's ghost. As you leave the scholar's street, the shrine's candles flicker, the harmony charm clacks, and you're left with the weight of a world where love bends to order. You're ready to slip deeper into ancient China's bedrooms, where passion fights to breathe under duty's grip, a dance as human as any today. The town hums on, and you're eager to see where desire breaks free. You're drifting through Luoyang's lantern-lit alleys, the spring air soft with the scent of blooming plum trees, but the weight of Confucian rules from that scholar's betrothal still presses on you, its rigid grip a stark contrast to the laughter spilling from a Taoist temple nearby. The city's pulse beats steady, vendors hawk dumplings, a flute wails, but you're drawn to a quiet courtyard where a couple whispers under a peach tree, their touches slow and deliberate, as if chasing something beyond mere pleasure. In ancient China, Taoism offered a different lens on sex, seeing it as a spiritual path to harmony and immortality, a far cry from the scholar's duty-bound bed. You're brushing past a jade-carved gate, the air humming with possibility as you dive into the mystical world of Taoist bedroom, where love is a cosmic dance and desire fuels the soul. Mainstream history tells us that Taoism, rooted in the balance of yin and yang, viewed sex as a sacred act to cultivate qi, life energy, harmonize body and spirit, and even prolong life, unlike Confucianism's focus on lineage and order. You're watching the couple, a scribe and his wife, move with a practiced grace, their breaths synchronized as if following an unseen script. Taoist texts, like the Huangdi Neijing, prescribed sexual techniques to balance energies, urging men to conserve their yang through restraint and women to nurture their yin through connection. You're feeling the courtyard stillness, the couple's focus almost otherworldly, and you're wondering how passion becomes a ritual in a town ruled by duty. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Taoists believed sleeping with a jade pillow, carved with yin-yang symbols, could channel sexual energy into dreams of immortality. You're spotting one on a nearby bench, its smooth surface glinting, and you're chuckling, imagining it's less comfy than it is cosmic. Historians still argue whether these pillows were practical aids or symbolic props, but you're betting They added a mystical vibe, especially when the wife's serene smile suggests she's dreaming big. You're sidestepping the pillow, it's cool, stone tempting, and you're hoping your own naps don't need such heavy hardware. The couple's ritual is a delicate art. You're noticing their slow movements guided by breath and touch, a stark contrast to the merchant couple's silk-sheeted caution or the scholar's betrothal nerves. The scribe pauses, his hand on her wrist, as if measuring her pulse to align their chi, and you're sensing a depth that makes medieval Europe's lusty troubadours seem shallow. Taoism teaches that sex isn't just for airs or pleasure, it's a meditation, a way to merge with the universe's flow, and you're catching the wife's eyes, calm yet intense, as if she's seeing stars beyond the peach tree. You're feeling the air's warmth, the temple's distant chants, and you're curious how they keep this focus when the city's rules loom so close. The practice isn't free of structure. You're hearing the scribe murmur about circulating, the essence, a Taoist term, for retaining vital energy, often through controlled climax, a discipline that'd make a Confucian scholar blush. You're thinking of that harmony charm dangling in the betrothal house, meant to tame lust. Here, lust's a tool, honed like calligraphy, and you're marveling at the couple's restraint, their bodies a canvas for cosmic art. The churches, medieval sermons with their sin-soaked guilt, feel worlds away. Here, it's the Tao that guides, urging balance over shame. You're brushing a plum blossom from your shoulder, its petals soft, and you're wondering if your own love life could use this kind of zen. Joke number 1, you thought yoga was intense? Try syncing your chi while your neighbor's ox cart rattles by. The broader world both embraces and resists this path. You're passing a Taoist adept, his robe embroidered with clouds, selling scrolls of bedroom techniques to curious merchants. But you're noticing Confucian frowns from passers-by, their eyes judging this frivolous pursuit. Taoism's sexual rites were elite, often reserved for scholars or the wealthy like this scribe, while peasants, as we'll see, grabbed love in fields, too busy for chi tricks. You're thinking of the emperor's palace, where Taoist ideas mingled with harem politics, and you're realizing sex here isn't just personal, it's a bridge to the divine, a defiance of the scholar's rigid rules. You're feeling the city's tension, a tug of war between duty and Tao, and you're curious how this couple keeps their cosmic spark alive. The courtyard's magic lingers. You're watching the couple share a cup of rice wine, their laughter, soft but free, a contrast to the betrothal's cold ledgers or the market's matchmaker hustle. You're sensing their bond, not just physical, but spiritual, and you're wondering if they've found a secret the Confucians missed. The temple's chants fade, the plum tree's blossoms drift, and you're carrying the hum of their world, a balance of body and soul, a dance that defies the town's rules. You're ready to slip deeper into ancient China's bedrooms, where passion battles propriety, a story as alive as the Tao itself. You're stepping away, the courtyard's glow dimming, eager to see where desire leads next. You're stepping out of the Taoist courtyard, the peach blossom's faint sweetness fading as Luoyang's spring night wraps around you, the city's lanterns casting a warm glow over tiled roofs, and the distant hum of a tavern's lute. The memory of that couple's cosmic dance, their breaths synced in pursuit of ki, lingers, a stark contrast to the Confucian scholar's caged heart. Now you're slipping through a palace gate, its vermilion pillars looming into the emperor's world, a labyrinth of silk and ambition where sex is a battlefield of power and pleasure. You're brushing past a jade lion statue, the air thick with intrigue, as you dive into the emperor's harem, a glittering cage of concubines where endless nights of desire fuel dynasties and rivalries. Mainstream history tells us that ancient, Chinese emperors, from the Han to the Tang, maintained vast harems, sometimes thousands of concubines, to ensure heirs, cement alliances, and flaunt divine virility, with sex a political tool as much as a personal indulgence. You're standing in a gilded chamber, its walls painted with phoenixes, where the emperor, a young Han ruler, lounges on a dragon-embroidered couch, his eyes scanning a dozen women in flowing robes, each vying for his favor. The harem's hierarchy is brutal, empress at the top, low-ranking maids at the bottom, and you're feeling the tension, each smile a calculated move, like a chess game with silk veils. You're catching the scent of lotus perfume, heavy and sweet, and you're wondering how love survives in this gilded trap. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some concubines wore moon charms, silver pendants shaped like crescents, believing they'd boost fertility by channeling lunar yin energy during the emperor's visits. You're spotting one glinting on a concubine's neck, her fingers tracing it nervously, and you're smirking, imagining it's less magic than a desperate edge in this cutthroat game. Historians still argue whether these charms were superstition or a psychological boost, but you're betting they're a mix, especially when her rival's glare suggests she'd steal it in a heartbeat. You're sidestepping a silk curtain, its rustles soft, and you're hoping your own charms don't need lunar backup. The chamber's a stage of power plays. You're watching the emperor beckon a concubine, her steps graceful, but her eyes sharp. Knowing a night with him could elevate her rank, or doom her if she fails to please. You're sensing the others' envy, their fans fluttering like whispers of betrayal, a far cry from the Taoist couple's serene qi dance or the scholar's dutiful betrothal. The emperor's virility is a state affair. His stamina proves heaven's mandate. His heirs secure the throne. And you're catching a eunuch's nod, his presence a reminder of the palace's control over every bed. You're thinking of medieval Europe's noble bedchambers where lust sparked wars. Here, it's a dynasty's foundation, and you're marveling at the stakes behind each caress. The harem's rules are ironclad. You're hearing a senior concubine, the emperor's favorite, murmur instructions. When to approach, how to flatter, what to wear, as if love's a military drill. You're noticing her jade hairpin, a symbol of her rank, and you're feeling the hierarchy's weight, where a wrong word could banish a girl to the cold palace, a place of forgotten women. The Confucian code, that scholar's cage, shapes even this lustful world. Duty to the throne trumps passion, and you're sensing the emperor's boredom, his eyes drifting as if seeking something beyond silk and submission. You're brushing a curtain's edge, its embroidery fine, and you're wondering how these women find agency in a bed where power, not love, rules. Joke number 1. You thought office politics were ruthless. Try flirting when your rival's plotting to spike. Your lotus tea, the palace's broader game, looms large. You're hearing distant gongs, signaling the emperor's nightly choice, a ritual that ripples through court. Ministers bet on heirs, clans push their daughters forward, and you're catching whispers of foreign princesses offered to seal treaties. The Taoist bedroom's spiritual quest feels distant. Here, sex is strategy. Each night, a move in a dynastic chessboard. You're thinking of the marketplace, where matchmakers bound peasant hearts, and you're realizing the emperor's harem is just a grander cage, its silk veils as binding as Confucian ledgers. You're feeling the chamber's heat, the concubine's calculated grace, and you're curious how they navigate this world of endless nights, where desire is both weapon and chain. The emperor rises, his choice made, and you're slipping out, the concubine's moon charm glinting as she follows him behind a screen. You're left in the corridor, the palace's opulence fading, carrying the hum of their world, lust, power, rivalry, a pulse that drives ancient China's heart. The harem's a glittering trap, but there's a spark in that concubine's eyes, a hint of ambition that defies her role, promising more stories to unravel. You're ready to step beyond the palace, to see how commoners snatch passion under the same starry sky, a dance as human as any in these silk-draped halls. You're stepping into the night, the city's lanterns glowing, eager to chase desire's next twist. You're slipping out of the emperor's palace, the glow of its vermilion gates fading as Luoyang's spring night wraps you in the scent of charcoal fires and distant jasmine, the concubine's moon charms and calculated smiles still shimmering. In your mind, the city's streets pulse with late-night vendors and drunken poets, but you're drawn to a humble village on the outskirts where mud-brick huts huddle under willow trees, and a peasant couple steals a quiet moment by a flickering oil lamp. Far from the harem's gilded cage or the Taoist couple's cosmic dance, these commoners' passions burn in the shadows, shaped by toil and the same Confucian rules that bound the scholar's heart. You're brushing past a creaky gate, the air heavy with earth and sweat, as you delve into the world of peasant love, where stolen kisses defy a life of labor and duty. Mainstream history tells us that in ancient China, peasants, over 80% of the population, lived under Confucian ideals that prioritized family survival and ancestral duty, with sex and marriage serving to secure labor and heirs, not romance, in a world of relentless harvests and taxes. You're crouching by the hut's open window, watching a farmer and his wife, their hands rough from rice fields, share a bowl of millet porridge, their laughter soft as they trade stories of the day's work. Unlike the emperor's silk-sheeted conquests, their intimacy is practical, a bond forged in shared survival, and you're feeling the warmth of their closeness, even as the hut's dirt floor grounds it in hardship. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some peasant couples tied red thread charms around their wrists during lovemaking, believing the mythical thread of fate would bind their souls, even if death or debt parted them. You're spotting a frayed red thread on the wife's wrist. It's not worn but tight, and you're smiling, imagining it's a romantic spark in their weary lives. Historians still argue whether these charms were heartfelt or just cheap folklore, but you're betting they're a flicker of hope, like the Taoist jade pillow's dreamy promise in a village where joy's as scarce as silver. You're brushing a willow leaf from your cloak, its softness fleeting, and you're hoping your own ties don't fray so easily. The hut's a world apart from the palace. You're noticing the couple's simple bed, a mat of woven reeds, no silk sheets like the merchants or dragon couches of the emperor. Yet their touch is tender, a stolen moment after a day of ploughing and weaving. You're sensing their exhaustion, their bodies lean from lean harvests, but their eyes hold a spark, a defiance of the Confucian code that demands sons over smiles. The scholar's betrothal, with its cold ledgers, feels distant. Here, love grows in the cracks of duty, like weeds in a rice paddy. You're catching the wife's playful nudge, her husband's grin, and you're marveling at how passion blooms in a life so hard. Joke number 1, you thought a long commute was tough? Try flirting after a 12-hour day dodging water buffalo. Their intimacy is shaped by survival. You're hearing the husband murmur about needing a son to work the fields, his voice heavy with the same ancestral pressure that caged the scholar, but his hand lingers on her cheek, a gesture softer than Confucian rules allow. The wife responds, her laughter low, and you're feeling their balance, duty to clan, but also to each other, a contrast to the harem's power plays or the Taoist's cosmic quest. The church's medieval guilt, with its sin-soaked sermons, is absent. Here, it's the ancestors' gaze that looms, and you're noticing a small shrine, its incense smouldering, as if to appease those spirits. You're sidestepping a clay pot, its crack a mirror of their fragile joy, and you're wondering how they keep love alive under such weight. The village's world mirrors their bed. You're passing other huts where couples snatch similar moments, whispers by looms, kisses in barns, their lives bound by the same rules that govern the palace, but stripped of silk or strategy. You're hearing a matchmaker's voice haggling dowries for a neighbor's daughter, and you're realizing sex here is a contract like the scholars, but it's also a refuge, a spark in the grind of taxes and toil. You're thinking of the emperor's harem, where desire was a throne's tool, and you're seeing this couple's love as a quiet rebellion, a bed where heart, not hierarchy, rules. You're feeling the village's rhythm, a pulse of work and want, and you're curious how these stolen moments hold against the world's demands. The night deepens, and you're lingering by the hut, the couple's lamp dimming as they settle. Onto their reed mat, their laughter fading into whispers. You're carrying the hum of their world, earth, sweat, love, a pulse that beats through ancient China's fields. Their passion's quiet, but it's fierce, a defiance of the rules that bound the scholar or the harem's glittering cage, promising more stories of desire's stubborn spark. You're ready to step deeper into this world, to uncover the secrets of its bedrooms, where love fights to bloom in the cracks of duty. You're slipping away, the village's willows swaying, eager to chase passion's next whisper. You're slipping away from the peasant couple's mud brick hut, the soft glow of their oil lamp fading as Luoyang's spring night wraps you in the scent of damp earth and distant cookfires. The memory of their red thread charm and tender touches, lingering like a quiet rebellion against the Confucian cage. The village's willow trees sway, but you're drawn back to the city's heart, scholar's study where lamplight spills onto a silk scroll, its delicate script detailing the art of love. In ancient China, erotic manuals like the Sunu Jing guided bedroom practices, offering a window into passion that defied the scholar's rigid betrothal or the emperor's harem politics. You're brushing past a bamboo screen, the air heavy with ink and anticipation, as you dive into the world of the Jade Chamber, where lovemaking was a studied craft, blending desire, health, and harmony. Mainstream history tells us that ancient Chinese erotic texts, from the Han to the Tang dynasties, were sophisticated guides blending Taoist principles with practical advice, teaching techniques to enhance pleasure, balance qi, and ensure fertility. Often written for elite men, but studied by couples across classes. You're watching a scholar, not the betrothed one we met, but a grizzled poet, unroll the Sunu Jing, his fingers tracing characters that describe positions, like flying dragons or reclining phoenix. These manuals weren't just pillow talk, they were medical and spiritual, prescribing sex as a path to longevity and cosmic order. And you're feeling the scroll's weight, its words a secret code in a city bound by duty. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some manuals claimed playing a jade flute before bed could tune a couple's qi, making their lovemaking more harmonious, a ritual as mystical as the Taoist couple's jade pillow. You're spotting a flute on the scholar's desk, its green stone gleaming, and you're smirking, imagining it's less melody than mood setter. Historians still argue whether these flutes were symbolic or actually played, but you're betting they added a whimsical vibe, especially when the scholar's wry grin suggests he's tried it. You're sidestepping a stack of scrolls, their musty scent sharp, and you're hoping your own romantic prep skips the woodwind section. the scholar's study is a haven of forbidden knowledge. You're reading over his shoulder the Sunu Jing, detailing not just positions but timing, lunar phases for conception, morning trysts for vitality, and you're sensing a depth that makes the harem's power plays or the peasant's practical love seem blunt. The text urges men to delay their climax to preserve yang, while women's pleasure, seen as yin's release, fuels mutual health, a balance that echoes the Taoist couple's qi dance. You're catching the scholar's murmur, practicing a breathing technique to circulate essence, and you're marveling at how sex here is a science, not a sin like in medieval Europe's church-gripped beds. You're feeling the room's quiet, the lamps flicker, and you're wondering how this wisdom fits in a world of matchmakers and ancestral shrines. The manuals aren't just for elites. You're hearing the scholar mention lending his copy to a merchant friend, a nod to how these texts trickled to commoners like the peasant couple who might mimic white tiger leaping in their reed mat bed. You're thinking of the Confucian scholar's betrothal, where duty caged desire. Here, the Sunu Jing frees it, teaching pleasure as a path to health, not shame. The emperor's harem, with its moon charms and rivalries, likely studied these scrolls too, blending lust with strategy. You're noticing a diagram, delicate but bold, and you're blushing. The scholar's chuckle, a reminder that passion's universal, even in a city of rules. Joke number 1, you thought Kama Sutra was spicy. Try mastering Galloping Stallion with your ancestors' ghosts taking notes. The broader world both hides and craves this knowledge. You're passing a street vendor selling cheaper woodblock prints of similar texts. Their covers coy but contents bold, snapped up by giggling apprentices. You're catching a Confucian scholar's frown, his robes stiff with disapproval, and you're realizing these manuals are a quiet rebellion against the harmony charms and betrothal ledgers. The Taoist temple's chants, faint in the distance, echo the scroll's yin-yang wisdom, but you're sensing tension. Confucian duty versus Taoist freedom, a clash that shapes every bed. You're thinking of the peasant's red thread, a spark of romance. Here, it's a whole bonfire, and you're curious how couples wield this wisdom in secret. The scholar rolls up the scroll, his eyes glinting with mischief, and you're slipping out, the study's ink fading as the city's lanterns glow. You're carrying the hum of the jade chamber, pleasure, balance, defiance, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's heart. These manuals are a map to passion, a guide that lights up the scholar's cage, the harem's games, and the peasant's toil, promising more stories of desire's clever dance. You're ready to step deeper into this world to see how women wielded their own power in these beds, a spark as bold as any scroll's script. You're walking into the night, the city's rhythm alive, eager to chase love's next secret. You're weaving through Luoyang's bustling morning streets, the spring air thick with the scent of steaming buns and ox dung dust. The scholar's Sunu Jing scroll and its steamy secret still flickering in your mind, a bold contrast to the emperor's harem politics or the peasant's quiet red thread love. The city's rhythm, vendors shouting, looms clacking, pulls you toward a merchant's courtyard, where a wife in a turquoise robe pours tea for her husband, her every move a delicate dance of duty and power. In ancient China, women wielded subtle influence in the bedroom, navigating Confucian cages to shape their households and hearts. You're slipping past a lotus pond, the air soft with petals, as you dive into the world of women's veiled bedroom power, where intimacy was a weapon and love a quiet rebellion. Mainstream history tells us that in Han Dynasty China, Confucian ideals placed women below men, confining them to roles as wives and mothers. But in private, Many used sex and emotional intimacy to influence husbands, secure status, or protect their families, a dynamic often overlooked in official records. You're watching the wife, her name May, tilt her head just so, her smile coaxing her husband, a silk trader, to share market gossip, his guard melting under her touch. Her bedroom influence isn't just for love, it's a lever to sway his decisions, from trade deals to their daughter's betrothal, and you're feeling the room's subtle tension, a chess game played with whispers and glances. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some women wore heart-lock pins, jade hairpins shaped like clasped hands, believing they'd bind their husband's affection, ensuring his loyalty in bed and beyond. You're spotting one in May's hair, its green stone glinting, and you're smirking, imagining it's less magic than a reminder of her charm, like the harem's moon charms. Historians still argue whether these pins were romantic tokens or strategic tools, but you're betting they're both, especially when May's coy glance lands like an arrow. You're brushing a lotus leaf from your sleeve, its silkiness fleeting, and you're hoping your own charm doesn't need jade backup. May's power is a delicate art. You're noticing her pour tea with precision, her words light but pointed, steering her husband toward a risky trade he'd otherwise shun. You're sensing her mastery, a contrast to the Taoist couple's qi dance or the peasant wife's practical tenderness as she uses intimacy to shape his mind, not just his heart. The Confucian code, that scholar's iron cage, demands her submission. But in bed she's a queen, her whispers as potent as the emperor's decrees. You're thinking of medieval Europe's noble women who schemed in bedchambers. Here, it's quieter, a silk-wrapped blade, and you're marveling at how May bends the rules without breaking them. You're catching the husband's nod, his trust, hers, and you're wondering how she learned this dance in a world that clips women's wings. The bedroom's her domain. You're picturing their nights, guided by Su Nu Jing techniques. May likely gleaned from whispered lessons, where her pleasure, Yin's release, strengthens their bond, giving her sway over his choices. You're hearing her hum a tune, soft but deliberate, and you're sensing her control, not just of the tea, but of their shared life. The harem's concubines, with their rivalries, fought for the emperor's bed. May fights for her family's future, her influence a ripple that reaches the market, the clan, even the ancestors' shrine. You're feeling the courtyard's calm, the pond's ripples, and you're curious how many women wield this power behind Luoyang's screens. Joke number 1. You thought pillow talk was casual. Try whispering trade tips while your in-laws' spirits eavesdrop. The broader world limits her reach. You're passing other homes where wives play similar games, coaxing, charming, steering. But Confucian rules keep them veiled, their voices soft, unlike the emperor's concubines who wielded open ambition. You're hearing a matchmaker hawk, a bride's virtues nearby, her dowry a ledger of duty, and you're realizing May's power is private, a bedroom rebellion against the scholar's public cage. The Taoist temple's yin-yang wisdom, with its bedroom harmony, gives her tools, but society's gaze, ancestors, neighbors keeps her tethered. You're thinking of the peasant wife's red thread spark, a simpler love. Here, it's a calculated flame, and you're seeing how women carve space in a world that binds them. The tea ritual ends, and you're slipping out, May's heartlock, pin glinting as she leads her husband inside, their steps a quiet pact. You're carrying the hum of her world, silk, strategy, desire, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's homes. Her power's veiled, but it's fierce, a defiance of the rules that caged the scholar or glittered in the harem, promising more stories of women's cunning spark. You're ready to step deeper into this world, to see how courtesans wielded a bolder charm, a dance as sharp as May's whispers. You're walking into the city's dawn, the market's hum rising, eager to chase passion's next twist. You're drifting through Luoyang's lantern-lit streets, the spring evening alive with the clatter of noodle carts and the faint strum of a peeper. The merchant wife's heartlock pin and subtle bedroom power still shimmering in your mind, a quiet rebellion against the Confucian cage that bound the scholar's betrothal. The city's pulse quickens as you approach a pleasure quarter, its painted pavilions glowing under silk awnings, where a courtesan in crimson robes sways, her laughter drawing men like moths to a flame. In ancient China, courtesans were artists of seduction, wielding charm and wit to navigate a world of desire and danger, far from the harem's gilded traps or the peasant's red thread love. You're slipping past a bamboo curtain, the air thick with plum wine and musk, as you dive into the alluring world of courtesans, where sex is a craft and every smile a calculated masterpiece. Mainstream history tells us that courtesans in Han and Tang dynasty China were elite entertainers, trained in music, poetry, and dance, often providing sexual companionship to wealthy men, their status a blend of prestige and precariousness, unlike the dutiful wives or imperial concubines. You're standing in a pavilion, its walls adorned with peony scrolls, watching the courtesan Lian play a pipa, her fingers coaxing notes that hush the room's drunken merchants and poets. Her role isn't just pleasure, it's power, her charm securing patrons' golden secrets, and you're feeling the room's electric hum, her gaze a net that snares every heart. You're catching the scent of her jasmine perfume, sharp and sweet, and you're wondering how she thrives in a world that both worships and scorns her. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some courtesans wore phoenix bells, tiny silver chimes sewn into their robes, believing their tinkling warded off jealous spirits or rival lovers' curses. You're spotting a faint jingle from Lian's sleeve, its chime soft but deliberate, and you're smirking, imagining it's less magic than a stage prop, like the merchant wife's heartlock pin. Historians still argue whether these bells were superstition or a seductive flourish, but you're betting they're both, especially when Lian's coy glance makes a merchant spill his wine. You're sidestepping a spilled cup, its stickiness fleeting, and you're hoping your own charm doesn't need such noisy backup. Lian's craft is a high-stakes performance. You're watching her shift from pipa to poetry, reciting a verse about moonlight and longing, her words ensnaring a scholar who forgets his Confucian restraint. You're sensing her mastery, a contrast to the Taoist couple's qi dance or the peasant wife's tender practicality, as she blends art and allure, her every move a calculated spell. The Confucian code, that scholar's iron cage, brands her a fallen woman, but in this pavilion she's a queen, her bedroom a stage where she writes her own script. You're thinking of medieval Europe's brothels where sex was sin. Here it's art, and you're marveling at how Lian turns scorn into status. You're catching her laugh, light but piercing, and you're wondering how she balances freedom and fragility in this silken world. Her power has limit. You're noticing a rival courtesan, her fan fluttering with venom, whispering to a patron about Lian's fading bloom, a reminder that youth and beauty are her currency, as fleeting as the emperor's favor in the harem. You're hearing a merchant boast of buying Lian's night, his gold heavy, and you're sensing her control. Her smile yields, but her eyes don't, a defiance that echoes the merchant wife's bedroom sway. The Su Nu Jing's techniques, those scholarly scrolls, likely guide her bed, blending pleasure with strategy, but her heart's a mystery, guarded tighter than a palace gate. You're feeling the pavilion's heat, the wine's haze, and you're curious how Lian keeps her soul intact in a world that buys her body. Joke number 1, you thought a bad audition was rough. Try charming a drunk poet while your rival spikes your tea with shade. The broader world both craves and condemns her. You're passing other pavilions where courtesans strum lutes or pour wine, their laughter a siren call to scholars escaping betrothal ledgers or merchants dodging Confucian wives. You're hearing a Confucian elder's tisk, his robe stiff with disapproval, and you're realizing Lian's world is a gilded cage like the harem, where freedom comes at a cost. The Taoist temple's yin-yang balance, with its bedroom harmony, lends her allure a spiritual sheen, but society's gaze, ancestors, wives, keeps her on the edge. You're thinking of the peasant couple's reed mat love, a simpler spark. Here, it's a wildfire, and you're seeing how courtesans dance where others dare not tread. The night peaks, and you're slipping out, Lian's phoenix bells chiming. As she leads her patron behind a screen, her laughter a final note. You're carrying the hum of her world, silk, wit, danger, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's shadows. Her allure's a blade, sharp as the merchant wife's whispers, or the Taoist's key, promising more stories of desire's daring edge. You're ready to step deeper into this world, to see how matchmakers bound hearts in duty's grip, a dance as intricate as Lian's peeper strings. You're walking into the city's glow, the market's hum rising, eager to chase love's next chord. You're strolling through Luoyang's bustling market, the spring morning vibrant with the clink of coins and the scent of sizzling sesame cakes, the courtesan's phoenix bells and seductive peeper still echoing in your mind, a bold contrast to the merchant wife's veiled power or the peasant's quiet red thread love. The city's pulse thrums, vendors hawk silk, ox carts rumble, but you're drawn to a tea house where a matchmaker, her ledger stuffed with names, brokers a betrothal between two families, her voice sharp as she tallies dowries and virtues. In ancient China, matchmakers were the architects of marriage, binding hearts for duty, not desire, in a world where love was a secondary spark. You're slipping into a corner seat, the air heavy with tea and tension, as you dive into the world of matchmaking where sex and family are a contract and romance waits in the wings. Mainstream history tells us that in Han Dynasty, China, marriages were arranged by matchmakers, often women, who negotiated unions based on family status, wealth, and Confucian ideals, ensuring alliances and heirs over personal affection, a practice that shaped every bedroom from peasant huts to imperial palaces. You're watching the matchmaker, Madam Wei, a wiry woman with a hawk's gaze, grill a merchant's father about his daughter's weaving skills, while the groom's mother counters with her son's land holdings. The couple-to-be, absent, are pawns in this deal, their future bed, a ledger's footnote, and you're feeling the room's weight, a bargain colder than the emperor's harem games. You're sipping bitter tea, its tang sharp, and you're wondering how love sneaks into this calculated dance. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some matchmakers used fate sticks, bamboo rods etched with zodiac signs, to predict a couple's compatibility, claiming the stars sealed their bedroom harmony. You're spotting Madame Wei shake a bundle of sticks, their clatter loud as she nods at a tiger-ox match, and you're smirking, imagining it's less cosmic than a sales pitch, like the courtesan's phoenix bells. Historians still argue whether these sticks were divination or a way to close deals, but you're betting they're a mix, especially when the groom's mother beams, sold on the stars. You're brushing tea leaves from your sleeve. They're grit, fleeting, and you're hoping your own matches don't need bamboo to spark. The tea house is a battlefield of bargains. You're watching Madame Wei tally dowries, silk bolts, copper coins, a pig. Her ledger, a mirror of the Confucian code that caged the scholar's betrothal, where family trumps heart. You're sensing the parents' pride, their nods sealing. A union that'll bind clans, not just beds, a far cry from the Taoist couple's qi dance or the courtesan's silken allure. The bride's skills, cooking, filial piety, are weighed like market goods, while the groom's wealth promises sons to honor ancestors, and you're catching the merchant's father boast of his daughter's modesty, as if love's irrelevant. You're thinking of medieval Europe's arranged marriages where dowries ruled. Here, it's the same, but with ancestral shrines looming, and you're marveling at the stakes behind each nod. You're feeling the room's hum, the tea's steam, and you're curious how the couple will find warmth in a bed so coldly planned. The rules are unyielding. You're hearing Madame Wei stress the bride's obedience, a Confucian virtue that echoes the merchant wife's subtle sway. But here it's a chain, not a tool. The groom's family demands a fertile match, their eyes on heirs like the peasant couple's sun-driven hopes, and you're sensing the absent couple's weight, two lives bartered like silk, their desires as hidden as the harem's rivalries. The Sunu Jing's bedroom arts, those scholarly scrolls, might guide their nights, but only after the matchmaker's pen seals their fate. You're noticing a zodiac chart on the wall, its ink faded, and you're wondering if the stars care about their heart. Joke number 1. You thought blind dates were bad? Try tying the knot with a matchmaker who's got your zodiac and your pig count on speed dial. The broader world mirrors this deal. You're passing other tea houses where matchmakers haggle, their ledgers binding peasants, merchants, even minor nobles, all under the Confucian yoke that shaped the emperor's harem. And the scholar's cage. You're hearing a street poet sing of fated love, his words a dream the matchmaker's sticks ignore, and you're realizing marriage here is a public act, like the palace's nightly rituals, where sex serves clan, not soul. You're thinking of the courtesan's free-spirited charm, a world apart. Here, it's duty's iron grip, and you're seeing how matchmakers weave the town's fabric, bed by bed. You're feeling the market's bustle, a pulse of trade and ties, and you're curious how love defies these ledgers in secret. The deal closes and you're slipping out, Madame Wei's sticks clattering as the families toast with tea, their smiles masking the absent couple's unknown heart. You're carrying the hum of their world, duty, dowries, destiny, a pulse that binds ancient China's beds. The matchmaker's ledger is cold, but there's a spark in that poet's song, a hint of rebellion that promises more stories of desire's quiet fight. You're ready to step deeper into this world, to uncover forbidden loves that crack the Confucian code, a dance as daring as any courtesan's peeper. You're walking into the morning's glow, the city's rhythm alive, eager to chase passion's next spark. You're weaving through Luoyang's crowded market, the spring sun high, the air buzzing with the shouts of silk vendors and the tang of roasted chestnuts, the matchmaker's clattering fate sticks and cold ledger still weighing on your mind, a stark contrast to the courtesan's silken allure or the peasant couple's red thread warmth. The city's pulse thrums, oxen plod, a flute wails, but you're drawn to a secluded garden, its bamboo grove hiding a whispered tryst between a scholar and a silk weaver's daughter, their hands brushing in defiance of Confucian rules. In ancient China, forbidden loves sparked scandal, breaking the matchmaker's contracts and risking shame, a dangerous dance far from the emperor's harem or the Taoist couple's qi harmony. You're slipping past a stone lantern, the air soft with moss and secrecy, as you dive into the world of illicit affairs where passion defies duty and every kiss courts ruin. Mainstream history tells us that in Han Dynasty China, extramarital affairs or unsanctioned loves were rare and risky, as Confucian ideals demanded strict fidelity and family honor, with lovers facing exile, disgrace, or worse if caught, especially across class lines. You're crouching behind a bamboo stalk, watching the scholar, not our betrothed one, but a young poet, pass a folded poem to the weaver's daughter, her eyes bright but wary, their love a secret that could shatter her family's name. Affairs threatened the social order, matchmakers' deals, ancestral shrines, and you're feeling the garden's tension, a hush heavier than the palace's intrigue. You're catching the scent of damp earth, cool and sharp, and you're wondering how their hearts outrun the rules that cage them. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some lovers exchanged shadow tokens, bits of cloth dyed with their breaths, moisture, believing they'd bind their souls despite society's wrath, a charm as fleeting as the harem's moon pendants. You're spotting a blue scrap in the girl's hand, its hue vibrant, and you're smirking, imagining it's less magic than a desperate keepsake, like the peasant's red thread. Historians still argue whether these tokens were romantic defiance or folklore's fancy, but you're betting they're a spark of hope, especially when her fingers clutch it tight. You're brushing a bamboo leaf from your shoulder, its whisper soft, and you're hoping your own secrets don't need such fragile ties. The garden's a fragile sanctuary. You're watching the scholar lean close, his poem a whisper of forbidden. Longing, a far cry from the Su Nu Jing scholarly art, or the merchant wife's calculated sway. Their love crosses class, his ink-stained hands against her calloused ones, a breach worse than infidelity, as the Confucian code, that matchmaker's iron ledger, forbids mixing scholar and artisan. You're sensing their fear, her glance, darting to the path, knowing her father's wrath or a matchmaker's gossip could end this. The harem's rivalries with their silk-wrapped daggers feel tame. Here, love's a rebellion, and you're catching the poet's trembling hand, his courage a spark in the dusk. You're thinking of medieval Europe's adulterous nights, their scandals bloody. Here, it's quieter, but no less deadly. You're feeling the bamboo's shade, the lantern's glow, and you're marveling at how they dare to dream in this rigid world. The stakes are brutal. You're hearing the girl whisper of her betrothal, a weaver's son chosen by the matchmaker, his loom her future, not this poet's ink. You're sensing her dread. Discovery could mean banishment, a shaved head, or worse, a family shamed before their ancestors' shrine, like the scholar's duty-bound cage. The poet's risk is lighter. Men faced fines, not ruin, but his clan's honor hangs in the balance, and you're catching his defiant verse, a vow to love despite the cost. The Taoist couple's qi dance, with its cosmic freedom, feels distant. Here, passion's a gamble, and you're wondering if they'll flee or fold under the weight of eyes unseen. You're sidestepping a pebble, its clink faint, and you're curious how they'll dodge the town's watchful gaze. You're recalling that merchant wife's bedroom power. Here, it's power they can't wield, only steal. The broader world hunts their secret. You're passing other gardens, where whispers hint at similar trysts, maids and scribes, widows and monks, all defying the matchmaker's ledgers or the emperor's harem rules. You're hearing a street gossip peddle tales of scandal, her voice sharp with glee, and you're realizing love here is a public risk like the courtesan's pavilion, where freedom comes at a cost. The Confucian code, with its ancestral shrines, binds every bed, but you're seeing cracks, poems, tokens, stolen glances that spark rebellion. You're thinking of the peasant couple's practical love, a simpler fight. Here, it's a fire that could burn them alive, and you're feeling the city's pulse, a rhythm of rules and rogues. The tryst ends and you're slipping out, the girl tucking the shadow token into her sleeve as the scholar vanishes into the dusk, their farewell, a whispered vow. You're carrying the hum of their world, poetry, risk, desire, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's shadows. Their love's aflame, daring as the courtesan's peeper or the merchant wife's whispers, promising more stories of passions. Reckless edge, you're ready to step deeper into this world, to see how beauty's pain, like foot-binding, shaped desire's dance, a twist as sharp as their stolen kiss. You're walking into the city's glow, the market's hum fading, eager to chase love's next spark. You're slipping out of the bamboo grove, the scholar's whispered poem, and the weaver's daughter's shadow token, fading into Luoyang's spring dusk, their forbidden love a defiant spark against the matchmaker's cold ledgers that bound hearts in the tea house. The city's lanterns flicker, casting shadows over tiled roofs, but you're drawn to a silk merchant's home where a young woman, her feet tightly bound, hobbles gracefully across a courtyard, her pained steps a symbol of beauty that captivates suitors. In ancient China, foot-binding was a painful custom tied to desire, transforming women's bodies to fit an ideal that fueled erotic fascination and social status. You're brushing past a cherry blossom tree, the air soft with petals, as you dive into the world of foot-binding, where beauty's agony-shaped bedroom allure and every step was a sacrifice. Mainstream history tells us that foot-binding, emerging later in the Tang dynasty but with roots in earlier ideals of delicate femininity, involved tightly wrapping young girls' feet to create small, lotus shapes, a practice that became a mark of beauty and marriageability, despite causing lifelong pain and disability. You're watching the woman shoe, barely 16, her bound feet, 3-inch golden lotuses, hidden in embroidered slippers, her grace masking a wince with each step. The practice, tied to Confucian ideals of female virtue and male desire, made women's restricted movement a symbol of refinement, and you're feeling the courtyard's hush, her beauty a fragile cage. You're catching the scent of her jasmine hair oil, sweet but sharp, and you're wondering how pain becomes a price for love in a city of silk and duty. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some suitors believed a woman's bound feet held yin essence, their small size amplifying her allure in bed, a charm as mystical as the harem's moon pendants or the lover's shadow token. You're spotting a suitor, a wealthy trader, his gaze fixed on shoes slippers, his nod hinting at this belief, and you're wincing, imagining it's less magic than a cultural trap, like the matchmaker's fate sticks. Historians still argue whether this erotic fixation was purely aesthetic or a power dynamic, but you're betting it's both, especially when Shu's forced smile hides her pain. You're sidestepping a fallen blossom, its softness fleeting, and you're hoping your own allure doesn't demand such a cost. Shu's world is a delicate prison. You're watching her serve tea, her steps slow and deliberate, a contrast to the courtesan's fluid peeper dance or the peasant wife's sturdy stride. You're sensing her agony, bones broken, toes curled under, a childhood ritual to mold her into a lotus. Yet her grace captivates, a beauty that echoes the merchant wife's bedroom sway, but costs blood. The Confucian code that scholars Iron cage glorifies her sacrifice as virtue, tying her worth to her suitor's gazes, and you're catching her mother's proud nod, her own bound feet a legacy of pain. You're thinking of medieval Europe's corsets crushing ribs for beauty. Here, it's feet, and you're marveling at how desire twists bodies to fit ideals. You're feeling the courtyard's calm, the tea's steam, and you're wondering how Shu finds strength in this cruel art. The bedroom allure is deliberate. You're picturing her suitor's visits guided by Su Nu Jing techniques, where her bound feet, small, delicate, are a fetish, stroked or praised, a contrast to the Taoist couple's qi balance or the forbidden lover's reckless passion. You're hearing whispers of her betrothal, a matchmaker's deal like the tea houses, where her lotus feet sealed the contract, her pain a dowry richer than silk. The harem's concubines fought with charm. Zhu's weapon is her body's sacrifice, and you're sensing her quiet power, her gaze steady despite the ache. You're noticing her slipper's embroidery, intricate as a palace screen, and you're curious how she navigates love when every step screams. Joke number 1. You thought high heels were bad. Try wooing with feet that feel like walking on knives. The broader world worships her pain. You're passing other homes where girls bind their feet, their mothers citing suitors' wealth or ancestral pride, a ripple from the emperor's court, where tiny feet signaled elite status, unlike the peasant's practical love. You're hearing a street singer's ballad of lotus love, his voice dreamy, and you're realizing foot bindings a public obsession, like the courtesan's pavilion, where beauty is a currency. The Taoist temple's yin-yang wisdom, with its bodily harmony, clashes with this mutilation, but Confucian duty binds every step, and you're seeing how women's bodies bear the town's ideals. You're thinking of the forbidden lover's secret tokens, a freer spark. Here, it's a chain, forged in pain, and you're feeling the city's pulse, a rhythm of beauty and sacrifice. The tea ritual ends, and you're slipping out shoes, lotus slippers glinting as she hobbles inside, her suitor's gaze trailing. You're carrying the hum of her world, silk, pain, desire, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's courtyards. Her beauty's a blade, sharp as the courtesan's wit, or the merchant wife's whispers, promising more stories of love's costly dance. You're ready to step deeper into this world, to see how fertility rituals shaped bedroom hopes, a prayer as urgent as Shu's every step. You're walking into the city's dawn, the market's hum rising, eager to chase passion's next twist. You're stepping away from the merchant's courtyard, the delicate clink of Shu's lotus slippers, and the weight of her painful beauty fading as Luoyang's spring morning hums with the chatter of silk vendors and the scent of blooming peonies. The city's rhythm, oxen plodding, looms clacking, carries you to a modest home where a young couple kneels before a small altar, their hands clasped over a clay fertility idol, their whispers fervent with hope for a child. In ancient China, bedroom rituals for fertility were sacred acts, blending Confucian duty with spiritual pleas, far from the courtesan's silken allure or the forbidden lover's reckless spark. You're brushing past a wooden door, the air heavy with incense and longing, as you dive into the world of fertility rites, where sex was a prayer and every embrace a plea for legacy. Mainstream history tells us that in Han Dynasty China, fertility was a cornerstone of Confucian society, with couples performing bedroom rituals to secure heirs, appease ancestors, and ensure clan survival, as childlessness was seen as a failure of filial piety. You're watching the couple, Li and Chun, light incense at their altar, its smoke curling around a clay figure of a plump infant, their faces taut with hope. These rites, often guided by Taoist or folk beliefs, involved specific acts, timing, positions, offerings to channel key for conception, and you're feeling the room's quiet urgency, their love a bridge to the future. You're catching the scent of sandalwood, sharp and warm, and you're wondering how desire bends under the weight of such prayers. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some couples placed seed charms, pomegranate-shaped amulets stuffed with rice, under their bed, believing they'd coax a child's spirit from the heavens, a charm as mystical as the lover's shadow token or the harem's moon pendant. You're spotting a red amulet peeking from under their reed mat, its tassel frayed, and you're smiling, imagining it's less magic than a hopeful nudge, like the peasant's red thread knot. Historians still argue whether these charms were spiritual or psychological props, but you're betting they're a spark of faith, especially when Chun's fingers brush it nervously. You're sidestepping a clay bowl of offerings, its rice grains scattered, and you're hoping your own dreams. Don't need such talismans, the bedroom's a sacred space. You're watching Lee pour rice wine into cups, a ritual offering to the ancestors, his voice low as he prays for a son, echoing the peasant couple's air-driven hopes or the scholar's betrothal duties. You're sensing Chun's quiet strength, her eyes fixed on the idol, her body prepared with herbal teas, ginseng, lotus seed, meant to boost fertility, a nod to the Sunu Jing's health-focused arts. Their lovemaking, planned for a waxing moon to align with Yin's peak, is less passion than prayer, a contrast to the courtesan's calculated charm or the Taoist couple's qi dance. You're thinking of medieval Europe's fertility charms, less structured but equally desperate. Here, it's a Confucian rite, and you're marveling at how sex becomes a bridge to eternity. You're feeling the room's warmth, the incenses, haze, and you're curious how they balance love with such cosmic stakes. The rituals are precise. You're hearing Chun murmur a chant learned from a village wise woman to invite a child's spirit, while Li arranges peach branches, symbols of fertility, around the bed, a practice as deliberate as the matchmaker's zodiac sticks. You're noticing their care, each act a plea to ancestors who loom like the emperor's court, demanding heirs to keep the clan's flame alive. The harem's concubines fought for the emperor's bed to birth princes. Here, it's a humbler fight, but no less urgent, and you're sensing their shared hope, their hands clasped as if to anchor their dream. You're brushing a peach petal from your sleeve, its softness fleeting, and you're wondering if their prayers will outlast the night. You're recalling the merchant wife's bedroom sway. Here, it's a sway toward legacy, not just love. The broader world amplifies their plea. You're passing other homes where couples burn similar incense, their altars adorned with idols or charms, a ripple from the palace where emperors prayed for sons to secure dynasties, unlike the forbidden lover's reckless tryst. You're hearing a street vendor hawk fertility herbs, his voice loud with promises, and you're realizing conception here is a public hope, like the matchmaker's deals, where sex serves clan, not just heart. The Taoist temple's yin-yang wisdom, with its bedroom balance, lends these rites a spiritual sheen, but Confucian duty binds every prayer, and you're seeing how children are the town's currency, more precious than silk. You're thinking of Shu's lotus feet, a beauty born of pain. Here, it's a child, born of ritual, and you're feeling the city's pulse, a rhythm of legacy and longing. The prayer ends and you're slipping out, Li and Chun settling onto their mat, the idol's clay eyes watching as the lamp dims. You're carrying the hum of their world, incense, hope, duty, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's beds. Their rituals a plea, urgent as Shu's painful steps, or the courtesan's peeper, promising more stories of desire's sacred edge. You're ready to step deeper into this world, to see how concubines' rivalries ignited in the palace's shadows, a fire as fierce as this couple's quiet prayer. You're walking into the city's glow, the market's hum rising, eager to chase passion's next flame. You're slipping out of the modest hovel, the flicker of Lian Chun's fertility idol fading as Luoyang's spring morning hums with the clatter of market carts and the scent of fresh-cut bamboo, their whispered prayers for a child still echoing. In your mind, a quiet plea against the Confucian cage that bound the matchmaker's ledgers. The city's pulse thrums, vendors shout, a temple bell tolls, but you're drawn back to the imperial palace, its vermilion gates looming, where concubines vie for the emperor's favor in a gilded web of rivalry and desire. In ancient China, the harem's power games turned bedrooms into battlefields, far from the peasant's red-thread love or the courtesan's silken peeper. You're brushing past a jade dragon carving, the air thick with intrigue, as you dive into the world of concubines' rivalries, where every caress is a gambit and passion fuels a deadly dance. Mainstream history tells us that in Han Dynasty, China, the emperor's harem was a hierarchy of thousands, from high-ranking consorts to lowly maids, where concubines competed for the emperor's bed to gain status, wealth, and influence for their families, often resorting to schemes, bribes, or even poison to outshine rivals. You're standing in a silk-draped hall, watching two concubines, Lady Zhao, a senior consort with a jade hairpin, and young Mei Lin, a newcomer with wide eyes, exchange veiled barbs over a game of Weiqi, their stones clicking like whispered threats. The emperor's favor, a ticket to power, sparks their feud, and you're feeling the room's electric tension, a chessboard where every move risks ruin. You're catching the scent of lotus incense, heavy and cloying, and you're wondering how love survives in this venomous glitter. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some concubines used dream sachets, tiny silk bags filled with mugwort and cinnamon, slipped under the emperor's pillow, believing they'd spark romantic visions of themselves, a charm as subtle as the merchant wife's heartlock pin. You're spotting a sachet peeking from Mei Lin's sleeve, its embroidery delicate, and you're smirking, imagining it's less magic than a sneaky edge, like the forbidden lover's shadow token. Historians still argue whether these sachets were superstition or psychological ploys, but you're betting they're both, especially when Lady Zhao's glare suggests she'd burn it if she could. You're sidestepping a spilled teacup, its stain fleeting, and you're hoping your own charms don't need such covert props. The hall's a stage of silent warfare. You're watching Lady Zhao, her smile sharp as a blade, recount a poem to the emperor's eunuch, hinting at Mei Lin's clumsy dance, a jab to dim her rival's star. You're sensing Mei Lin's counter, her laughter bright but calculated, offering the eunuch a jade comb, a bribe to secure the emperor's next visit. Their rivalry, unlike the Taoist couple's qi harmony or the peasant's tender practicality, is a bloodless duel where sex is a weapon to climb the harem's ranks, not a bond. You're thinking of medieval Europe's court intrigues, where lovers schemed. Here, it's colder, a silk-wrapped war, and you're marveling at how they wield desire like a sword. You're catching the eunuch's nod, his loyalty a coin for sale, and you're wondering how these women keep their hearts from breaking in this game. You're recalling the merchant wife's bedroom sway. Here, it's a sway for survival, not just love. The stakes are lethal. You're hearing whispers of past rivalries, concubines banished, poisoned, or worse, their families shamed, like the forbidden lovers risked exile. Lady Zhao's rank, earned through years in the emperor's bed, teeters if Mei Lin conceives first, a son sealing her rival's triumph, a pressure akin to Lian Chun's fertility prayers. You're sensing Mei Lin's fear, her youth, her only edge, while Zhao's experience, honed by Sunu Jing techniques, makes her a formidable foe. The Confucian code, that scholar's iron cage, demands their loyalty to the emperor, but there, knives are out for each other, and you're catching Zhao's fan snap shut, a signal of war. You're brushing a silk curtain, its softness a lie, and you're curious if their rivalry will end in triumph or tears. Joke number 1. You thought reality TV was drama. Try sharing an emperor with a rival who's got a dream sachet and a grudge. The broader world fuels their fight. You're passing other palace halls where concubines scheme. Some bribe eunuchs, others spread gossip. A ripple from the emperor's throne, where heirs, like the matchmaker's deals, bind dynasties, unlike the forbidden lover's reckless spark. You're hearing a court poet sing of harem beauties, his verses coy, and you're realizing their rivalries are public sport, like the courtesan's pavilion, where charms are currency. The Taoist temple's yin-yang wisdom, with its bedroom, balance lends their beds a spiritual sheen, but Confucian duty stokes their ambition, and you're seeing how the harems, a microcosm of Luoyang's power plays. You're thinking of Shu's lotus feet, beauty born of pain. Here, it's power, born of rivalry, and you're feeling the palace's pulse, a rhythm of desire and danger. The game pauses and you're slipping out, Mei Lin's sachet glinting as she bows to the emperor's passing sedan, Zhao's glare a silent vow. You're carrying the hum of their world, silk, schemes, desire, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's palaces. Their rivalries are fire, fierce as Shu's painful grace or the courtesan's peeper, promising more stories of passions. Perilous edge, you're ready to step deeper into this world to see how polygamy strained hearts in humbler homes, a tangle as sharp as these concubines' fans. You're walking into the city's glow, the palace's shadow fading, eager to chase love's next flame. You're gliding out of the imperial palace, the flicker of Lady Zhao's fan and Mei Lin's dream sachet fading as Luoyang's spring dusk wraps you in the scent of roasted soybeans and distant temple incense, the harem's venomous rivalries, still pulsing in your mind, a glittering contrast to the peasant couple's red thread love or the merchant wife's veiled sway. The city's rhythm, lanterns glowing, a peddler's shout, carries you to a merchant's compound, its tiled courtyard, bustling with the chatter of multiple wives, their voices a tense harmony under the weight of shared love. In ancient China, polygamy among wealthy men strained household dynamics, shaping bedrooms into arenas of duty and discord, far from the Taoist couple's qi dance or the forbidden lover's reckless spark. You're slipping past a stone lion, the air heavy with jasmine and jealousy, as you dive into the world of multiple wives, where sex is a shared burden and every night a delicate balance. Mainstream history tells us that in Han Dynasty China, wealthy men often took multiple wives or concubines, a practice rooted in Confucian ideals of lineage and status, but this polygamy sparked tensions as wives competed for affection, influence, and sons, much like the emperor's harem, but on a humbler scale. You're standing in the courtyard, watching three women, first wife Lan, second wife Hua, and concubine Ying, tend a garden, their hands pruning peonies, but their eyes darting, each vying for the merchant husband's favor. The household's harmony hinges on their roles, Lan as matriarch, Hua as mother of the heir, Ying as the young beauty, and you're feeling the air's brittle calm, a truce as fragile as silk. You're catching the scent of peony petals, sweet but fleeting, and you're wondering how love survives in this crowded heart. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some wives wore unity beads, strings of jade or coral, believing their shared colors. would bind their spirits to the husband, a charm as hopeful as the fertility couple's seed amulet or the harem's dream sachet. You're spotting a coral strand on Hua's wrist, its beads clinking softly, and you're smirking, imagining it's less magic than a pointed reminder of her place, like the courtesan's phoenix bells. Historians still argue whether these beads were symbols of peace or subtle boasts, but you're betting they're a mix, especially when Lan's glance at Hua's wrist sours. You're sidestepping a fallen peony, its bloom crushed, and you're hoping your own bonds don't need such shiny props. The courtyard's a quiet battlefield. You're watching Lan, her grey-streaked hair, pinned with authority, direct the household's chores, her voice firm, but her smile tight as she notes Ying's flirtatious laugh with their husband. You're sensing Hua's pride, her son a trump card, yet her eyes betray worry as Ying's youth, unburdened by childbirth, draws the merchant's gaze. Their bedroom roles, unlike the Sunu Jing's scholarly art or the peasant's tender practicality, are a roster. Lan for wisdom, Hua for heirs, Ying for pleasure, a balance that echoes the harem's rivalries but feels more intimate, more raw. You're thinking of medieval Europe's noble mistresses sparking court scandals. Here, it's domestic, a silk-wrapped strain, and you're marveling at how they navigate this shared bed. You're catching Lan's sharp command, Hua's forced nod, and you're wondering how they keep from unraveling. You're recalling the merchant wife's bedroom power. Here, it's split three ways, a fraught dance. The tensions simmer in there, night. You're picturing the merchant's bed, guided by Confucian duty to spread his seed fairly, a schedule as rigid as the matchmaker's zodiac sticks, where each wife's turn is a chance to secure favor or a son, like Li and Chun's. Fertility prayers. You're hearing whispers of Ying's Sunu Jing tricks, her youth a blade against Hua's experience, while Lan's authority, earned through years, keeps the household's peace, barely. The Confucian code demands their harmony, like the scholar's betrothal cage, but jealousy brews, and you're sensing their private battles. Cold silences, spiked tea, less deadly than the harem's poison, but no less sharp. You're brushing a jasmine vine, its thorns hidden, and you're curious if their rivalry will hold or crack. You're thinking of the forbidden lover's secret tokens. Here, love's no secret, just a shared strain. The broader world mirrors their strife. You're passing other compounds where multiple wives tend hearths, their unity beads glinting, a humbler echo of the emperor's harem or the matchmaker's deals, where sex serves lineage, not heart. You're hearing a street storyteller spin tales of polygamous woes, his crowd chuckling, and you're realizing these tensions are public sport, like the courtesan's pavilion, where charms are game. The Taoist temple's yin-yang wisdom with its bedroom balance offers no salve for jealousy, but Confucian duty binds their beds, and you're seeing how polygamy weaves the town's fabric, thread by thread. You're thinking of Shu's lotus, feet, beauty born of pain. Here, it's harmony, born of tension, and you're feeling the city's pulse, a rhythm of duty and discord. The garden work ends and you're slipping out, Ying's laughter trailing as Lan leads them inside. Huazi, coral beads a quiet defiance. You're carrying the hum of their world, silk, jealousy, duty, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's homes. Their rivalries a simmer, sharp as the harem's fan snaps or Shu's painful grace, promising more stories of love's tangled edge. You're ready to step deeper into this world, to see how eunuchs guarded these beds, a shadow as cold as this household's truce. You're walking into the city's glow, the courtyard's peonies fading, eager to chase passion's next twist. You're slipping out of the merchant's bustling courtyard, the clink of Hua's coral unity beads, and the tense harmony of multiple wives fading as Luoyang's spring evening wraps you in the scent of charcoal braziers and distant plum blossoms. Their quiet rivalry a stark contrast to the fertility couple's sacred prayers or the forbidden lover's reckless tokens. The city's pulse thrums, lanterns sway, a street singer's voice drifts, but you're drawn back to the imperial palace, its jade gates looming, where a eunuch, his robes swishing, patrols the harem's corridors with a hawk's gaze. In ancient China, eunuchs were the guardians of forbidden spaces, enforcing bedroom rules and wielding power in the shadows, far from the courtesan's silken peeper or the peasant's red thread warmth. You're brushing past a bronze incense burner, the air thick with sandalwood and secrets, as you dive into the world of eunuchs, where sex is controlled by those who cannot partake, and every whisper is a weapon. Mainstream history tells us that in Han Dynasty China, eunuchs, men castrated to serve the emperor, guarded the harem, managed palace affairs, and often influenced politics, their lack of sexual capacity making them safe keepers of the emperor's women, though their power sparked resentment among nobles and officials. You're trailing a eunuch, Chen, his face smooth and ageless, as he glides through a silk-draped hall, his keys jangling, ensuring no concubine strays or lover sneaks past. Their role was critical, protecting the emperor's lineage from scandal, like the forbidden tryst we glimpsed, and you're feeling the corridor's chill, Chen's authority a silent blade. You're catching the scent of lotus perfume, faint but cloying, and you're wondering how power thrives in a world where desire is a forbidden fruit. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some eunuchs carried loyalty talismans, bronze medallions, etched with dragons, believing they'd shield them from palace curses or vengeful spirits, a charm as potent as the harem's dream sachet or the fertility couple's seed amulet. You're spotting one dangling from Chen's sash, its glint subtle, and you're smirking, imagining it's less magic than a badge of survival, like the merchant wife's heartlock pin. Historians still argue whether these talismans were superstition or symbols of status, but you're betting they're a shield in a palace of knives, especially when Chen's sharp glance catches a concubine's giggle. You're sidestepping a spilled wax drip, its stickiness fleeting, and you're hoping your own loyalty doesn't need such heavy charms. Chen's world is a shadowed chessboard. You're watching him pause at a concubine's door, Lady Zhao's from our harem visit, his ear pressed to the silk screen, ensuring her night with the emperor follows protocol, a far cry from the Taoist couple's qi dance or the peasant's tender practicality. You're sensing his power, keys to every chamber, secrets of every bed, yet his isolation, a man neither male nor female in Confucian eyes, despised by the court but feared by all. The harem's rivalries, with their fan snaps and poison whispers, depend on his vigilance, and you're catching his murmured report to a senior eunuch, detailing Zhao's mood, a spy's work cloaked in silk. You're thinking of medieval Europe's court spies, less visible. Here, it's a castrated man's domain, and you're marveling at how he shapes desire without touching it. You're feeling the hall's cool marble, the burner's smoke, and you're wondering how Chen finds purpose in this sexless reign. His role is a paradox. You're hearing a concubine, Mei Lin, offer Chen a jade comb, a bribe to secure her next night with the emperor, echoing the merchant wife's subtle games, but his refusal is cold, his loyalty or ambition tied to the throne, not her charms. You're sensing his influence, whispering to the emperor, about consorts' fidelity or rivals' schemes, a power that could topple clans, unlike the scholar's betrothal cage or the fertility couple's private prayers. The Su Nu Jing's bedroom arts guiding harem nights are his to monitor, ensuring no scandal taints the imperial seed, and you're catching his glance at a guard, a silent command to watch Mei Lin's door. You're brushing a curtain's edge, its silk a lie, and you're curious if Chen's heart, like his body, is cut off from desire. You're recalling the courtesan's free-spirited allure. Here, it's a locked gate, guarded by a man who holds every key. The broader world fears his shadow. You're passing other palace corridors where eunuchs glide, some bribable, others ruthless, their talismans glinting, a humbler echo of the emperor's harem or the matchmaker's deals, where sex is controlled, not free. You're hearing a courtier's curse, blaming eunuchs for state woes, and you're realizing their power is public dread, like the witch test's mob frenzy, where trust is a casualty. The Taoist temple's yin-yang wisdom, with its bedrooms, balance, offers no place for Chen, but Confucian duty binds his role, and you're seeing how eunuchs weave the palace's web, bed by bed. You're thinking of Shu's lotus feet, beauty born of pain. Here, it's power, born of loss, and you're feeling the palace's pulse, a rhythm of control and cunning. The night deepens, and you're slipping out, Chen's keys jangling as he locks Lady Zhao's door, his talisman a faint glint in the lantern's glow. You're carrying the hum of his world, silk, secrets, power, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's palaces. His vigilance is a chain, cold as the harem's rivalries or Shu's painful grace, promising more stories of desire's guarded edge. You're ready to step deeper into this world, to see how love poetry pulsed with hidden heat, a spark as daring as Chen's silent reign. You're walking into the city's dusk, the palace's shadow fading, eager to chase passion's next whisper. You're gliding away from the palace's shadowed corridors, the jangle of Chen's eunuch keys and the harem's silk-draped intrigues, fading as Luoyang's spring night wraps you in the scent of blooming orchids and distant wood smoke. The weight of his sexless vigilance, a stark contrast to the merchant wife's jealous harmony or the fertility couple's sacred prayers. The city's pulse thrums, lanterns flicker, a night market hums, but you're drawn to a scholar's moonlit garden where a poet, his brush poised over rice paper, crafts verses that pulse with unspoken passion, their words a coded rebellion against Confucian restraint. In ancient China, love poetry was a veiled art, hiding desire in metaphors of rivers and willows, far from the courtesan's bold peeper or the forbidden lover's reckless tokens. You're brushing past a bamboo trellis, the air soft with ink, and longing as you dive into the world of love poetry, where every line is a hidden heat and passion whispers through the page. Mainstream history tells us that in Han and Tang dynasty China, poetry was a high art, with love poems, often written by men but sometimes by women, using nature imagery to express desire, skirting Confucian censorship that frowned on overt passion, a delicate dance that shaped bedroom dreams across classes. You're watching the poet Wei, a middle-aged scholar with ink-stained fingers, write of a willow's sway and a river's rush, his eyes distant, as if seeing a lover's face. These verses, shared in wine-soaked salons or slipped, to secret loves fueled fantasies from palace harems to peasant huts, and you're feeling the garden's hush, the poem's rhythm a heartbeat in the night. You're catching the scent of wet ink, sharp and fresh, and you're wondering how words weave desire in a city bound by duty. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some poets sealed love poems with heart ink, a mix of cinnabar and their own blood, believing it bound their soul to the beloved, a charm as potent as the harem's dream sachet or the fertility couple's seed amulet. You're spotting a red smear on Wei's scroll, its hue vivid, and you're wincing, imagining it's less magic than a dramatic flourish, like the forbidden lover's shadow token. Historians still argue whether this heart ink was romantic, devotion or poetic showmanship, but you're betting it's both, especially when Wei's sigh suggests a love unreturned. You're sidestepping a spilled ink pot, its stain fleeting, and you're hoping your own words don't need such bloody flair. Wei's garden is a sanctuary of longing. You're reading over his shoulder the poem's metaphors, moonlit waves, parted clouds, veiling a desire that had scandalized the matchmaker's tea house or the scholar's betrothal cage. You're sensing his ache, a contrast to the Taoist, couple's qi harmony or the peasant's tender practicality, as he writes for a woman, perhaps a courtesan, perhaps a wife, whose name hides behind the willow's sway. The Confucian code demands restraint, like the merchant wife's unity beads, but poetry frees his heart, a rebellion as daring as the forbidden lover's tryst. You're thinking of medieval Europe's troubadour songs, bold but less coded. Here it's a whisper, and you're marveling at how Wei's brush dances where his lips cannot. You're catching the moon's glow, the bamboos rustle, and you're wondering who stirs his heart in this rigid world. You're recalling the courtesan's seductive peeper. Here it's a quill no less potent. The poem's heat is coded but fierce. You're hearing Wei murmur a line about rivers meeting, a nod to Su Nu Jing's bedroom arts, where passion fuels health, not just airs, and you're sensing its double meaning, love as union, not just lust. You're picturing the poem's reader, her cheeks flushing in a lantern-lit chamber, a spark that defies the harem's rivalries or the fertility couple's ancestral pleas. The emperor's court, with its eunuch spies, might censor such verses, but they spread in secret, like the forbidden lover's tokens, and you're catching Wei's careful pause, as if fearing a listener beyond the bamboo. You're brushing a willow branch, its leaves soft, and you're curious if his love will ever step from the page. You're thinking of Shu's lotus feet, beauty born of pain. Here it's poetry, born of restraint, a different ache. The broader world craves these verses. You're passing taverns where poets recite similar lines, moons, rivers, veiled desire, to drunken merchants and giggling maids, a ripple from the palace where concubines pen their own poems, unlike the peasant's practical love. You're hearing a street vendor hawk poetry scrolls, his voice loud with promises, and you're realizing love's words are public currency, like the matchmaker's deals, where sex serves heart, not just claim. The Taoist temple's yin-yang wisdom with its bedroom balance lends these poems a spiritual sheen, but Confucian duty binds their passion, and you're seeing how poetry threads the town's dreams, line by line. You're thinking of the harem's fan snaps, a sharper game. Here, it's a softer rebellion, and you're feeling the city's pulse, a rhythm of ink and yearning. The poem ends and you're slipping out, Wei rolling his scroll, the heart ink's red smear glinting as he hides it in his sleeve. You're carrying the hum of his world, willows, rivers, desire, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's heart. His poetry's a flame, daring as the courtesan's charm or the forbidden lover's tryst, promising more stories of passion. Coded edge. You're ready to step deeper into this world to see how spring festivals sparked flirty freedom, a dance as bold as Wei's quill. You're walking into the city's night, the garden's moon fading, eager to chase love's next spark. You're slipping out of the scholar's moonlit garden, the poet's heart-ink scroll and its veiled passion fading as Luoyang's spring night hums with the clatter of night-watch gongs and the scent of charcoal fires weighs coded longing, a soft rebellion against the Confucian cage that bound the matchmaker's ledgers. The city's pulse thrums, lanterns sway, a drunkard sings, but you're drawn to a riverside festival where coloured banners flutter and drums pulse, marking the spring equinox, a rare night when rules loosen and flirtations bloom. In ancient China, festivals like this offered fleeting freedom for love and lust, far from the harem's scheming fans or the merchant wives' tense unity. You're brushing past a willow dangling with ribbons, the air alive with laughter and rice wine as you dive into the world of festival flirtations, where desire dances under starlight and every glance sparks possibility. Mainstream history tells us that in Han Dynasty China, seasonal festivals like the spring equinox were moments of social release, where Confucian restraints on sex and courtship eased, allowing young men and women to mingle, flirt, and even court under the guise of ritual. A brief escape from matchmakers' deals and ancestral shrines. You're weaving through the crowd, watching a young weaver, Jia, in a peach blossom hairpin, trade shy smiles with a blacksmith's apprentice, their hands brushing as they tie ribbons to a willow for luck. These festivals were sanctioned spaces, for romance often leading to betrothals, and you're feeling the riverbank's electric buzz, their glances a spark in the night. You're catching the scent of sweet osmanthus cakes, sticky and warm, and you're wondering how love ignites in a town so tightly bound. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some festival goers tossed love knots, woven straw hearts, into the river, believing the current would carry their desire to a fated match, a charm as hopeful as the poet's heart ink or the fertility couple's seed amulet. You're spotting Jia clutch a straw heart, her fingers hesitant, and you're grinning, imagining it's less magic than a bold move like the courtesan's phoenix bells. Historians still argue whether these knots were folklore or a ritualized flirt, but you're betting they're a spark of daring, especially when the apprentice's wink makes her blush. You're sidestepping a spilled wine jug, its stickiness fleeting, and you're hoping your own flirts don't need river magic to land. The riverbank's a stage for freedom. You're watching Jia and the apprentice join a circle dance, their steps lively under lantern glow, a contrast to the Taoist couple's qi harmony or the forbidden lover's secret tryst. You're sensing their thrill, the Confucian code, that scholar's iron cage, softened by the festival's leniency, where a glance or touch isn't scandal but sport. The matchmakers' ledgers, with their cold dowries, feel distant. Here love's a game, and you're catching Jia's laugh, bold as she spins, her hairpin glinting like Shu's lotus slippers. You're thinking of medieval Europe's May Day, revels rowdy but less ritualized. Here, it's a sanctioned spark, and you're marveling at how they seize this night's loose reins. You're feeling the drums beat, the river's cool mist, and you're wondering how many hearts catch fire before dawn. You're recalling the merchant wife's bedroom's sway. Here, it's a sway in the open, no veil needed. The flirtations are fleeting but fierce. You're hearing the apprentice tease Jia about her knot, his voice low, a nod to Su Nu Jing's playful arts, where desire fuels connection, not just airs. You're sensing her reply, a coy quip about his hammer's aim, and you're grinning, their banter a defiance of the harem scheming or the fertility couple's solemn prayers. The festival's rules allow this, chaperones linger, but their eyes are lenient, unlike the eunuch's palace watch, and you're catching an elder's nod, as if approving a match that'll seal with a matchmaker's tea. The forbidden lovers. Risky tryst with its shadow tokens feels reckless. Here, it's a sanctioned spark, but no less bold, and you're wondering if Jia's knot will float to a betrothal or just a memory. You're brushing a ribbon from your cloak. It's silk, a whisper. And you're curious if their flirt will outlast the lantern's glow. Joke number 1. You thought speed dating was fast. Try locking eyes when the festival's your only shop before your parents call the matchmaker. The broader world craves this release. You're passing other festival spots, bonfires, boat races, where couples trade glances, their love knots bobbing in the river, a humbler echo of the emperor's harem rituals or the poet's coded verses, where desire finds a voice. You're hearing a street bard sing of festival loves, his lute twanging, and you're realizing these nights are public dreams, like the courtesan's pavilion, where passion's a currency. The Taoist temple's yin-yang wisdom, with its bedroom balance, lends these flirts a spiritual sheen, but Confucian duty looms, ready to bind them, and you're seeing how festivals thread the town's heart, spark by spark. You're thinking of the merchant wives' tense unity, a colder bond. Here, it's a fire, brief but bright, and you're feeling the city's pulse, a rhythm of freedom and fleeting joy. The dance ends, and you're slipping away, Jia's straw heart tossed into the river. As the apprentice watches, their smiles a quiet vow. You're carrying the hum of their world, lanterns, ribbons, desire, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's nights. Their flirts aflame, daring as the poet's verses or the courtesan's charm, promising more stories of passion. Fleeting edge, you're ready to step deeper into this world, to see how herbal aphrodisiacs stirred desire, a brew as bold as this festival's spark. You're walking into the city's dusk, the river's glow fading, eager to chase love's next twist. You're drifting away from the riverside festival, the flicker of Jia's straw love knot bobbing in the current, and the apprentice's bold wink fading as Luoyang's spring night wraps you in the scent of willow pollen and smoky street grills. The festival's flirty freedom, a vibrant spark against the Confucian cage that bound the matchmaker's tea house, or the merchant wives' tense unity. The city's pulse thrums, lanterns bob, a late cart rumbles, but you're drawn to an apothecary's dim shop, its shelves groaning with jars of dried roots and powdered horns, where a wise woman brews a steaming potion said to kindle desire. In ancient China, herbal aphrodisiacs were a potent art, fueling passion in bedrooms from peasant huts to palace harems, far from the poet's coded verses or the forbidden lover's reckless tryst. You're brushing past a curtain of dried herbs, the air thick with ginseng and musk, as you dive into the world of desire-stirring brews, where love is a potion and every sip a gamble. Mainstream history tells us that in Han Dynasty China, herbal aphrodisiacs, blends of ginseng, deer antler, and rare barks were widely used to boost libido, fertility, and vitality, rooted in Taoist beliefs that sexual energy, QI, was key to health and longevity, often prescribed by physicians or wise women for couples seeking passion or heirs. You're watching the wise woman, her hands gnarled but deft, grind a mix of cordyceps and wolfberry into a clay pot, her eyes glinting as she promises a merchant, nervous but eager, a night of dragon's fire. These brews, detailed in texts, like the Huangdi Neijing, were as much medicine as magic, and you're feeling the shop's humid heat, the potion's steam curling like a lover's whisper. You're catching the scent of bitter roots, sharp and earthy, and you're wondering how a sip can spark desire in a city bound by duty. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some believed adding a phoenix feather, actually a dyed quail plume, to the brew would summon a lover's ardor, a charm as whimsical as the festival's love knots or the harem's dream sachet. You're spotting a red plume floating in the pot, its tip bobbing, and you're smirking, imagining it's less magic than a theatrical flourish, like the poet's heart ink smear. Historians still argue whether these feathers were folklore or a placebo's spark, but you're betting they're a bit of both, especially when the merchant's hopeful grin suggests he's sold on the plume. You're sidestepping a spilled herb pile, its dust fleeting, and you're hoping your own passion doesn't need such feathered props. The shop's a crucible of longing. You're watching the wise woman pour the brew into a clay cup, her chant, low invoking yin and yang, to ignite the merchant's qi, a nod to the Taoist couple's qi dance, but earthier, less cosmic. You're sensing his nerves. He's married, likely seeking to rekindle his wife's desire or secure a son. Like thee, fertility couples idle prayers, yet the potion's promise, unlike the Sunu Jing's scholarly art, is raw, a fire for any bed. The Confucian code, that scholar's iron cage, frowns on reckless lust, but here it's medicine, and you're catching the merchant's flush, his fingers trembling as he sips, the brew's bitterness making him wince. You're thinking of medieval Europe's love potions, often banned. Here they're prescribed, and you're marveling at how desire's bottled in this pragmatic town. You're feeling the shop's warmth, the steam's haze, and you're curious if the brew will light his night or just his wallet. You're recalling the courtesan's seductive peeper. Here it's a potion, no less potent. The brew's craft is precise. You're hearing the wise woman list ingredients: licorice for stamina, cinnamon for heat, each chosen to balance qi, like the festival's sanctioned flirts or the merchant wife's heartlock sway. You're noticing her ledger, scribbled with recipes for newlyweds, aging lords, even concubines, a contrast to the harem's scheming fans or the forbidden lover's risky tokens. The merchant's wife, perhaps weary from childbirth, might welcome this spark or resent his seeking it, and you're sensing the delicate line, passion as duty, not defiance, unlike the poet's coded verses. The emperor's harem, with its moon charms, likely sipped similar brews, and you're wondering if Lady Zhao or Mei Lin ever visited this shop. You're brushing a ginseng root, its knobby shape odd, and you're hoping their marriage finds fire without feud. You're thinking of Shu's lotus feet, beauty born of pain. Here, it's desire born of herbs, a different cost. The broader world craves these sparks. You're passing other apothecaries, their jars glowing under lanterns, where couples buy brews for love or heirs, a humbler echo of the palace's harem rites or the matchmaker's deals, where sex serves legacy, not just heart. You're hearing a street healer hawk dragon's vigor pills, his voice brash, and you're realizing desire's a public trade, like the festival's love knots, where passion's a currency. The Taoist temple's yin-yang wisdom, with its bedroom balance, grounds these brews, but Confucian duty binds their use, and you're seeing how aphrodisiacs thread the town's beds, sip by sip. You're thinking of the merchant wives' tense unity, a colder bond. Here it's a fire, bottled but bold, and you're feeling the city's pulse, a rhythm of duty and daring. The merchant pays, and you're slipping out the wise woman's phoenix feather glinting as she brews another batch, her chant a soft promise. You're carrying the hum of her world, herbs, heat, desire, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's hearts. Her potions a flame, potent as the festival's flirts or the courtesan's charm, promising more stories of passion's fiery edge. You're ready to step deeper into this world, to see how ghost lovers' haunted dreams, a spark as eerie as this brew's steam. You're walking into the city's night, the shop's glow fading, eager to chase love's next twist. You're stepping out of the apothecary's steamy shop, the wise woman's phoenix feather brew, and its musky promise fading as Luoyang's spring night wraps you in the scent of lotus ponds and flickering oil lamps. The merchants, hopeful, sip a fiery spark against the Confucian cage that bound the festival's flirty knots, or the merchant wives' tense unity. The city's pulse thrums, watchmen call, a lute twangs, but you're drawn to a village shrine on the outskirts, where a widow kneels before a flickering altar, whispering of a ghostly lover who visits her dreams, his touch as real as moonlight. In ancient China, tales of ghost lovers haunted imaginations, blending desire with the supernatural, far from the courtesan's bold peeper or the harem's scheming fans. You're brushing past a stone fox statue, the air heavy with incense and mystery, as you dive into the world of spectral trysts, where love defies death and every dream is a forbidden dance. Mainstream history tells us that in Han Dynasty China, belief in spirits was widespread, with folklore describing ghost lovers, spirits of the dead, who seduced the living in dreams or visions, often seen as omens or warnings, reflecting a cultural fascination with love beyond the grave. You're watching the widow May, her face softened by candlelight, murmur to a clay tablet etched with her late husband's name, her voice trembling as she recounts his dream visit, his whispers stirring her heart. These tales, recorded in texts like the Liexian Zhuan, blurred desire and dread, and you're feeling the shrine's eerie calm, her story a shiver in the night. You're catching the scent of myrrh incense, smoky and sharp, and you're wondering how love lingers in a town so bound by life's rules. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some believed burning spirit silk, cloth dyed with mulberry ash, could summon a ghost lover's presence, ensuring their dream tryst felt vivid, a charm as eerie as the festival's love knots or the apothecary's phoenix feather. You're spotting a singed silk scrap by the altar, its edges blackened, and you're wincing, imagining it's less magic than a widow's desperate hope, like the forbidden lover's shadow token. Historians still argue whether these silks were ritual or emotional crutches, but you're betting they're a spark of longing, especially when May's fingers clutch the ash. You're sidestepping a candle's wax drip, its stickiness fleeting, and you're hoping your own dreams don't need such ghostly props. The shrine's a portal to the uncanny. You're listening to May describe her husband's spirit, his touch, cool but hers, their dream bed a reed mat like the peasant couple's, a far cry from the Taoist couple's qi harmony or the harem's silk-sheeted schemes. You're sensing her awe, her heart stirred by a love that defies Confucian death, where ancestors demand rest, not romance, unlike the fertility couple's idle prayers. The tales warn of danger, ghosts draining life, like medieval vampire myths, but May's glow suggests joy, a rebellion against the matchmaker's cage or the scholar's betrothal ledgers. You're thinking of Europe's ghostly ballads, less tied to duty. Here it's a widow's defiance, and you're marveling at how she clings to this spectral bond. You're catching the altar's glow, the fox statue's stare, and you're wondering who visits her dreams tonight. You're recalling the courtesan's seductive allure. Here it's a spirit, no less potent. The dreams are vivid but perilous. You're hearing May whisper of their love-making, guided by Su Nu-Jing-like passion, where her yin meets his ghostly yang, a balance that echoes the apothecary's brew but risks her soul, unlike the harem's calculated rivalries. You're sensing her fear. Village gossip could brand her mad or worse, cursed like the witch test's drowned victim. Yet her love persists, a spark as bold as the forbidden lover's tryst. The Confucian code demands she mourn, not dream, But her altar's offerings, wine, rice, defy it, and you're catching her smile, faint as moonlight, a vow to keep him near. You're brushing a myrrh leaf, its scent lingering, and you're curious if her dreams will hold or haunt her. You're thinking of Shu's lotus feet, beauty born of pain. Here, it's love, born of loss, a different ache. The broader world feeds these myths. You're passing other shrines where villagers burn candles for spirits, lovers, kin, heroes. Their tales of ghost trysts whispered, a humbler echo of the palace's harem dramas or the poet's coded verses where desire transcends flesh. You're hearing a storyteller spin a yarn of a ghostly bride, his voice low, and you're realizing these stories are public dreams like the festival's flirty sparks where love's a currency. The Taoist temple's yin-yang wisdom with its spiritual balance lends these tales a mystic sheen, but Confucian duty frowns on them, and you're seeing how ghosts thread the town's heart, story by story. You're thinking of the merchant and wives' tense unity, a colder bond. Here, it's a fire, spectral but fierce, and you're feeling the village's pulse, a rhythm of longing and lore. The prayer ends and you're slipping away, May's silk ash smouldering as she bows to the altar, her eyes bright with dream-lit love. You're carrying the hum of her world, incense, spirits, desire, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's shadows. Her ghosts aflame, eerie as the festival's knots or the courtesan's charm, promising more stories of passion's otherworldly edge. You're ready to step deeper into this world, to see how same-sex bonds flickered in the shadows, a spark as hidden as May's dreams. You're walking into the village's dusk, the shrine's glow fading, eager to chase love's next twist. You're slipping away from the village shrine, the widow's smouldering spirit silk, and her ghostly lover's dream whispers fading as Luoyang's spring night wraps you in the scent of damp moss and distant temple bells. May's spectral passion, a haunting spark against the Confucian cage that bound the festival's flirty knots or the harem's scheming fans. The city's pulse thrums, watchmen's lanterns bob, a night vendor hawks dumplings, but you're drawn to a quiet pavilion by a lotus pond where two young scholars, their robes brushing, share a stolen glance under moonlight. Their bond, a secret that defies the matchmaker's ledgers. In ancient China, same-sex desires flickered in the shadows, veiled by Confucian duty but alive in subtle bonds, far from the courtesan's bold peeper or the fertility couple's idle prayers. You're brushing past a bamboo screen, the air soft with lotus and secrecy, as you dive into the world of hidden same-sex love, where passion whispers in silence and every touch risks scandal. Mainstream history tells us that in Han Dynasty China, same-sex relationships, particularly between men, were documented in elite circles, often described in poetry or court records as cut-sleeve passions, a term from Emperor Ai's love for his male companion, Dongxian. Though Confucian, norms of marriage and heirs kept them discreet, unlike the public roles of wives or concubines. You're watching the scholars Liang and Wei sip rice wine under a lantern's glow, their laughter low but charged, their fingers grazing as they pass a poetry scroll. These bonds, often between scholars or courtiers, were tolerated if they didn't disrupt family duties, and you're feeling the pavilion's hush, their closeness a fragile rebellion. You're catching the scent of lotus blooms, cool and sweet, and you're wondering how love thrives in a town that buries such desires. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some lovers exchanged cloud tokens, carved wooden birds painted with rain, motifs believing they'd shield their bond from prying eyes, a charm as subtle as the widow's spirit silk or the festival's love knots. You're spotting a wooden sparrow in Liang's sleeve, its paint chipped, and you're smiling, imagining it's less magic than a tender vow, like the forbidden lover's shadow cloth. Historians still argue whether these tokens were romantic, keepsakes or coded signals, but you're betting they're a spark of defiance, especially when Wei's glance lingers on the bird. You're sidestepping a fallen lotus petal, its softness fleeting, and you're hoping your own secrets don't need such carved wings. The pavilion's a clandestine haven. You're watching Liang recite a poem, its metaphors of twin peaks and shared streams veiling their desire. A coded heat like the poet's willow verses, but riskier, a far cry from the Su Nu Jing's scholarly art or the peasant couple's tender practicality. You're sensing their caution, Wei's hand pausing mid-gesture, aware that a servant's ear or a Confucian elder's scorn could brand them reckless, unlike the festival's sanctioned flirts. The Confucian code, that scholar's iron cage, demands they marry women for heirs, like the matchmaker's tea-house deals, but their bond, intellectual, emotional, physical, defies it, a rebellion as bold as the forbidden lover's garden tryst. You're thinking of medieval Europe's sodomy laws, harsher. Here, it's silence, not fire, that punishes, and you're marveling at how they carve this space. You're catching the lantern's flicker, the pond's ripple, and you're wondering how they guard their hearts in this watchful world. You're recalling the courtesan's seductive charm. Here, it's a glance, no less potent. Their love is veiled but vivid. You're hearing Wei's soft reply, a verse about clouds entwined, a nod to the cut-sleeve tale where Emperor Ai shared his robe with Dongxian. And you're sensing their pride, a claim to a legacy the harem's rivalries or the fertility couple's prayers can't touch. You're picturing their nights, perhaps guided by Su Nu Jing-like balance, where yin and yang blend beyond gender, a contrast to the merchant wife's tense unity or the apothecary's fiery brew. The palace's eunuchs, with their cold keys, might suspect such bonds, but here, in the scholar's world, poetry shields them, and you're catching Liang's smile, a vow to keep this secret. You're brushing a bamboo stalk, its rustle faint, and you're curious if their bond will endure or crack under duty's weight. You're thinking of Shu's lotus feet, beauty born of pain. Here, it's love, born of silence, a different risk. The broader world hides their spark. You're passing other pavilions, where scholars share wine, their glances hinting at similar bonds, a humbler echo of the emperor's cut-sleeve tale, or the poet's coded verses, where desire finds a shadow. You're hearing a tavern bard sing of twin cranes, his voice coy. And you're realizing these loves are public secrets, like the festival's flirty sparks where passion's a whisper. The Taoist temple's yin-yang wisdom with its bedroom balance offers a subtle nod to their bond, but Confucian duty, ancestors' heirs, buries it, and you're seeing how same-sex love threads the town's heart, glance by glance. You're thinking of the harem's scheming fans, a louder game. Here, it's a quieter rebellion, and you're feeling the city's pulse, a rhythm of duty and daring. The wine runs dry, and you're slipping out, Liang's cloud token, glinting as he tucks it away, their farewell, a whispered verse. You're carrying the hum of their world, poetry, shadows, desire, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's hidden corners, their bonds aflame, daring as the widow's ghost or the courtesan's charm, promising more stories of passion's secret edge. You're ready to step deeper into this world, to see how prostitution's gilded cages trapped desire, a spark as fraught as this scholar's glance. You're walking into the city's dusk, the pavilion's glow fading, eager to chase love's next twist. You're drifting away from the lotus pond's quiet pavilion, the flicker of Liang's cloud token, and the scholar's veiled glances fading as Luoyang's spring night wraps you in the scent of jasmine vines and distant charcoal braziers. There, hidden same-sex bond, a subtle spark against the Confucian cage that bound the festival's flirty knots, or the widow's ghostly dreams. The city's pulse thrums, lanterns sway, a night market hums, but you're drawn to a glowing pleasure house in the city's heart, its red lacquered doors promising delights under silk awnings, where women in embroidered robes offer smiles that mask deeper truths. In ancient China, prostitution thrived in gilded cages, a world of beauty and pain far from the poet's coded verses or the fertility couple's idle prayers. You're brushing past a carved phoenix screen, the air thick with plum wine and musk, as you dive into the world of pleasure houses where sex is a trade and every caress hides a cost. Mainstream history tells us that in Han Dynasty China, prostitution was a regulated trade with pleasure houses, often state-sanctioned, housing women who provided companionship, music, and sex to merchants, scholars, and officials. Their lives a mix of glamour and servitude, unlike the courtesan's elite allure or the merchant wife's veiled sway. You're standing in a candlelit hall watching a young woman, Xu Yan, pour wine for a boisterous silk trader, her laughter bright but her eyes guarded, her role a delicate balance of charm and survival. These houses, detailed in records like the Shiji, were economic hubs, but their women faced stigma and exploitation, and you're feeling the room's brittle warmth, her smile a fragile mask. You're catching the scent of sandalwood incense, heavy and sweet, and you're wondering how beauty thrives in a cage so cruel. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some pleasure women wore jade teardrops, pendant earrings shaped like rain, believing they'd ward off sorrow, a charm as poignant as the scholar's cloud token or the fertility couple's seed amulet. You're spotting a teardrop glinting in Xu Yan's ear, its green stones swaying, and you're wincing, imagining it's less magic than a quiet plea, like the harem's dream sachet. Historians still argue whether these teardrops were symbols of resilience or mere decoration, but you're betting they're a spark of hope, especially when Xu Yan's fingers brush it nervously. You're sidestepping a spilled wine cup, its stickiness fleeting, and you're hoping your own strength doesn't need such fragile gems. The hall's a stage of calculated grace. You're watching Xu Yan strum a pipa, her notes softer than the courtesan's bold performance, her charm a survival tool, a contrast to the Taoist couple's qi harmony or the peasant's tender practicality. You're sensing her skill, honed by years in this house where she entertains men like the trader, is gold buying her time, not her heart, unlike the forbidden lover's reckless tryst. The Confucian code, that scholar's iron cage, brands her fallen like the same-sex scholar's hidden bond, but here she's a commodity, her bedroom a contract, colder than the matchmaker's ledgers. You're thinking of medieval Europe's brothels, harsher but less gilded. Here it's a silken trap, and you're marveling at how Xu Yan dances within it. You're catching her glance at a fellow worker, a silent pact, and you're wondering how she keeps her soul intact in this trade. You're recalling the merchant wife's bedroom power. Here it's borrowed, paid in smiles. The cost is steep. You're hearing whispers of Xu Yan's past, sold by a debt-ridden father, her freedom a distant dream, unlike the harem's rivalries, where status was the prize, or the fertility couple's hopeful prayers. You're sensing her fatigue, her youth fading like Xu's lotus feet, her body a tool for the house's profit, guided by Sunu Jing-like arts, to please patrons, not herself. The house's madam, a sharp-eyed woman with a ledger, tracks her earnings, and you're catching Xu Yan's forced laugh, a mask for a life bound by others' lust. The palace's eunuchs guarded beds with keys. Here, it's gold, and you're wondering if she dreams of escape or just endures. You're brushing a silk curtain, its softness a lie, and you're curious if her teardrop earring holds enough hope to carry her through. You're thinking of the festival's flirty freedom. Here, it's a cage, gilded but locked. The broader world feeds this trade. You're passing other pleasure houses, their lanterns glowing, where women like Xu Yan serve scholars, dodging betrothal woes, or merchants fleeing tense wives, a humbler echo of the emperor's harem or the courtesan's pavilion, where desire's a currency. You're hearing a street poet sing of Willow Lane beauties, his voice coy, and you're realizing their lives are public tales like the ghost lover myths, where beauty's a mask. The Taoist temple's yin-yang wisdom with its bedroom balance offers no freedom here, but Confucian duty, ancestors, profit, binds their trade, and you're seeing how pleasure houses thread the town's heart, coin by coin. You're thinking of the same-sex scholar's hidden spark, a freer love. Here, it's a sail, and you're feeling the city's pulse, a rhythm of desire and despair. The night peaks and you're slipping out, Xu Yan's jade teardrop glinting as she leads the trader upstairs, her peeper silent. You're carrying the hum of her world, silk, sorrow, desire, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's shadows. Her cage is gilded, heavy as the harem's rivalries, or Xu's lotus pain, promising more stories of passion's costly edge. You're ready to step deeper into this world, to see how virginity's weight pressed on brides, a burden as sharp as Xu Yan's masked smile. You're walking into the city's dusk, the pleasure houses' glow fading, eager to chase love's next twist. You're gliding away from the pleasure house's glowing lanterns, the faint chime of Xu Yan's jade teardrop earrings, and her masked smile fading as Luoyang's spring night wraps you in the scent of blooming magnolias and sizzling street skewers, the gilded cage of prostitution, a stark contrast to the same-sex scholars' hidden cloud tokens or the festival's flirty love knots. The city's pulse thrums, watchmen's gongs echo, a tavern spills laughter. But you're drawn to a merchant's home where a young bride, veiled in red silk, prepares for her wedding night, her hands trembling under the weight of her virginity's sacred role. In ancient China, a bride's virginity was a heavy burden, tied to family honor and Confucian duty, far from the courtesan's bold peeper or the ghost lover's spectral tryst. You're brushing past a lacquered gate, the air heavy with incense and expectation, as you dive into the world of bridal virginity, where purity is a currency and every step is under society's gaze. Mainstream history tells us that in Han Dynasty, China, a bride's virginity was a cornerstone of Confucian values, symbolizing her chastity and loyalty to her husband's lineage, with its loss before marriage risking family shame or broken betrothals, a pressure that shaped every wedding, night from peasant huts to elite estates. You're watching the bride, Lan Yu, kneel before a family altar, her mother murmuring blessings as she adjusts her phoenix crown, its pearls glinting. The wedding, sealed by the matchmaker's tea-house deals, hinges on her purity, proven by blood on the marital bed, and you're feeling the room's oppressive hush, her breath quick as if ancestors' eyes are fixed on her. You're catching the scent of cedar incense, smoky and sharp, and you're wondering how love blooms under such scrutiny in a city bound by honor. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some brides carried chastity fans, bamboo screens painted with peonies, believing their floral motifs would shield their virtue from evil spirits, a charm as delicate as the pleasure house's jade teardrops or the scholar's cloud tokens. You're spotting a fan in Lan Yu's lap, its petals vibrant, and you're wincing, imagining it's less magic than a nervous prop, like the fertility couple's seed amulet. Historians still argue whether these fans were ritual or bridal anxiety.
AIDS, but you're betting they're a flicker of hope, especially when Lan Yu's fingers clutch it tight.
You're sidestepping a scattered rice grain, its crunch fleeting, and you're hoping your own pressures don't need such painted shields. The bridal chamber's a crucible of duty. You're watching Lan Yu's mother drape her in red, the color of joy, but also blood, a nod to the proof her husband expects, a far cry from the Taoist couple's qi harmony or the peasant's tender, red thread love. You're sensing her fear. She's never met her groom, a scholar chosen by the matchmaker, and her virginity, unlike the courtesan's traded charm, is her clan's honor, a weight heavier than the harem's rivalries. The Confucian code, that scholar's iron cage, demands her purity, like the merchant wife's unity beads, and you're catching her mother's stern glance, urging silence despite the tremble in her hands. You're thinking of medieval Europe's bridal sheets displayed for proof. Here, it's private, but no less cruel, and you're marveling at how Lan Yu steels herself for this test. You're feeling the room's warmth, the incense's haze, and you're wondering how she finds courage in this public gaze. You're recalling the forbidden lover's secret tryst. Here, there's no secret, only scrutiny. The night's ritual is rigid. You're picturing the wedding bed, guided by Su Nu Jing arts, whispered by her mother, where Lan Yu must please her groom while proving her virtue, a pressure unlike the apothecary's fiery brew or the poet's coded verses. You're hearing the mother's advice: lie still, endure. A contrast to the merchant wife's bedroom sway, where women wielded power, or the pleasure house's paid allure. The groom's family, waiting beyond the screen, expect blood-stained sheets by dawn, a custom as old as the emperor's harem heirs, and you're sensing Lan Yu's dread, her chastity fan a frail shield against their judgment. The palace's eunuchs guarded beds with keys. Here, it's tradition, and you're wondering if her heart races for love or fear. You're brushing a silk veil's edge, its softness a lie, and you're curious if her night will seal honor or shame. You're thinking of Shu's lotus feet, beauty born of pain. Here, it's purity, born of pressure, a different cost. The broader world enforces this burden. You're passing other homes where brides prepare similar rites, their chastity fans, glinting a humbler echo of the emperor's harem or the matchmaker's deals, where sex serves lineage, not heart. You're hearing a street singer's ballad of pure brides, his voice dreamy, and you're realizing virginity's a public obsession, like the pleasure house's gilded trade, where women's bodies bear the town's ideals. The Taoist, temple's yin-yang wisdom, with its bedroom balance, offers no ease for this test, but Confucian duty, ancestors, honor binds every veil. And you're seeing how brides thread the town's heart, step by step. You're thinking of the same-sex scholar's hidden spark, of freer love. Here, it's a chain, forged in expectation, and you're feeling the city's pulse, a rhythm of duty and dread. The blessing ends, and you're slipping out, Lan Yu's chastity fan trembling as she rises for the groom's arrival, her mother's nod a silent command. You're carrying the hum of her world, silk, purity, fear, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's beds. Her burdens await, heavy as Xu Yan's gilded cage, or the harem's rivalries, promising more stories of passion's costly edge. You're ready to step deeper into this world, to see how adultery's stakes risked ruin, a fire as fierce as Lan Yu's veiled dread. You're walking into the city's dusk, the altar's glow fading, eager to chase love's next twist. You're slipping out of the merchant's incense-heavy home, the tremble of Lan Yu's chastity fan, and the weight of her bridal virginity fading as Luoyang's spring dusk wraps you in the scent of cooling street braziers and blooming night. Jasmine, her looming wedding night, a stark pressure against the Confucian cage that bound the pleasure house's gilded trade, or the same-sex scholars' hidden tokens. The city's pulse thrums, lanterns flicker, a peddler's cry echoes, but you're drawn to a shadowed alley behind a tavern where a married woman, her veil askew, steals a hurried embrace with a travelling poet, their whispers frantic with forbidden desire. In ancient China, adultery was a deadly gamble, risking shame, exile, or worse, far from the festival's flirty knots or the fertility couple's sacred prayers. You're brushing past a stack of empty wine jars, the air thick with sweat and secrecy, as you dive into the world of adulterous affairs, where love defies duty and every touch courts ruin. Mainstream history tells us that in Han Dynasty China, adultery, especially by women, was a grave offense under Confucian law, threatening family honor and lineage purity, with punishments ranging from public shaming to execution, while men faced lighter consequences, reflecting the double standards of a patriarchal society. You're crouching behind a cracked barrel, watching the woman, Shuling, a weaver's wife, press a silk scarf into the poet's hand, her eyes bright with fear and longing, their affair a breach that could shatter her clan's name. These liaisons, though rare due to strict surveillance, flared in secret, and you're feeling the alley's tense hush, their stolen moment a spark that could ignite disaster. You're catching the scent of spilled rice wine, sour and sharp, and you're wondering how passion outweighs such peril in a city bound by ancestors' eyes. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some adulterers carried shadow charms, small bronze mirrors etched with paired fish, believing they'd cloak their tryst from vengeful spirits or spying neighbors, a talisman as fleeting as the pleasure house's jade teardrops or the scholar's cloud tokens. You're spotting a mirror glinting in Xuling's sleeve, its surface dull, and you're wincing, imagining it's less magic than a desperate shield, like the widow's spirit silk. Historians still argue whether these charms were folklore or a lover's last hope, but you're betting they're a flicker of defiance, especially when her fingers clutch it tight. You're sidestepping a puddle of wine, its stickiness fleeting, and you're hoping your own risks don't need such mirrored tricks. The alley's a perilous hideout. You're watching the poet, his ink-stained fingers grazing Xuling's cheek, their embrace a rushed echo of the forbidden lover's bamboo garden tryst, but heavier with consequence, unlike the Taoist couple's qi harmony or the courtesan's calculated charm. You're sensing Xuling's dread. Her husband, a weaver bound by the matchmaker's ledgers, could return from market, and discovery would mean divorce, flogging, or worse, her clan shamed before their shrine, a fate harsher than the same-sex scholar's silent disgrace. The poet's risk is lighter, fines, not ruin, but his whispered verse, bold as the Sunu Jing's arts, vows eternal love, and you're catching her tearful nod, a heart torn between duty and desire. You're thinking of medieval Europe's adulterous scandals, often romanticized. Here, it's a death sentence, and you're marveling at how they dare this dance. You're feeling the alley's chill, the jars clink, and you're wondering how they'll escape the town's watchful gaze. You're recalling the merchant wife's bedroom power. Here, it's a power stolen, not wielded. The stakes are brutal. You're hearing Shuling whisper of her husband's neglect, his loom her prison, a contrast to the fertility couple's shared prayers or the harem's scheming fans, where desire served lineage or status. You're sensing the poet's urgency, their tryst timed to evade neighbors' eyes, unlike the festival's sanctioned flirts, and you're picturing their hurried bed, perhaps a tavern loft, where passion, not key or airs, rules, a defiance of the Confucian code that caged the virgin bride's night. The palace's eunuchs guarded imperial beds. Here, it's gossip, sharp as a blade, and you're catching her glance at the alley's mouth, fearing a shadow. You're brushing a jar's rough clay, its edge cold, and you're curious if their love will burn out or blaze them down. You're thinking of shoes, lotus feet, beauty born of pain. Here, it's passion, born of peril, a fiercer cost. The broader world hunts their secret. You're passing other alleys where whispers hint at similar trysts, wives with scribes, merchants with maids, all defying the matchmaker's deals or the scholar's ancestral duties, a humbler echo of the forbidden lover's garden or the poet's coded verses where desire risks all. You're hearing of street gossip peddle tales of fallen wives, her voice gleeful, and you're realizing adultery's a public sin like the pleasure house's trade where women bear the shame. The Taoist temple's yin-yang wisdom, with its bedroom balance, offers no shelter for their sin, but Confucian duty, ancestors' honor, brands them traitors, and you're seeing how illicit love frays the town's fabric, thread by thread. You're thinking of the harem's rivalries, a louder game. Here, it's a quieter doom, and you're feeling the city's pulse, a rhythm of duty and defiance. The embrace ends, and you're slipping away, Xu Ling's shadow charm glinting. As she flees, the poet's scarf pressed to his chest, their farewell a breathless vow. You're carrying the hum of their world, silk, risk, desire, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's shadows. Their affairs are fire, deadly as the virgin bride's burden or the pleasure house's cage, promising more stories of passion's perilous edge. You're ready to step deeper into this world, to see how bedroom spies betrayed trust, a web as tangled as Xu Ling's scarf. You're walking into the city's dusk, the alley's wine fading, eager to chase love's next twist. You're slipping out of the shadowed tavern alley, the faint glint of Xu Ling's shadow charm and the poet's hurried farewell fading as Luoyang's spring dusk wraps you in the scent of cooling street dust and blooming night orchids. There, adulterous gamble a reckless spark against the Confucian cage that bound the virgin bride's trembling night or the pleasure house's gilded trade. The city's pulse thrums, lanterns flicker, a watchman's call echoes, but you're drawn back to the imperial palace, its jade gates looming where a concubine's whispered secret, overheard by a cunning maid, ripples through the court, like poison. In ancient China, bedroom spies wove webs of betrayal, turning intimate moments into weapons, far from the festival's flirty love knots or the same-sex scholars' hidden glances. You're brushing past a bronze crane statue, the air thick with intrigue and myrrh, as you dive into the world of palace espionage where sex is a secret and every whisper risks ruin. Mainstream history tells us that in Han Dynasty China, palace, intrigue often hinged on bedroom secrets with maids, eunuchs, and courtiers spying on concubines and emperors to gain favor or topple rivals, a practice that fueled political plots and dynastic shifts, as recorded in texts like the Han Shu. You're standing in a silk-draped corridor, watching a maid, Xiao Yue, her eyes sharp, linger outside Lady Zhao's chamber, our harem rival, eavesdropping on her murmurs with the emperor, her words a potential blade for Mei Lin's faction. These spies, often low-born but cunning, turned pillow talk into power, and you're feeling the hall's oppressive hush, Xiao Yue's silence, a coiled threat. You're catching the scent of myrrh incense, smoky and heavy, and you're wondering how trust survives in a palace where every bed is a stage. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some spies carried ear charms, tiny silver bells worn as earrings, believing they'd sharpen their hearing for secrets. A talisman as subtle as the adulterer's shadow mirror, or the pleasure house's jade teardrops. You're spotting a bell glinting in Xiao Yue's ear, its chime faint, and you're smirking, imagining it's less magic than a bold disguise, like the eunuch's loyalty medallion. Historians still argue whether these charms were superstition or a spy's flair, but you're betting they're a spark of cunning, especially when Xiao Yue's gaze darts, catching a rival maid's step. You're sidestepping a spilled wax drip, its stickiness fleeting, and you're hoping your own secrets don't need such jangling props. The corridor's a web of betrayal. You're watching Xiao Yue press closer to the screen, her breath held. As Zhao's laughter spills out, a contrast to the Taoist couple's qi harmony or the peasant's tender, red thread love. You're sensing her ambition. She's no eunuch like Chen, bound by keys, but a maid whose whispered report to Mei Lin could earn gold or a higher post, unlike the festival's sanctioned flirts or the poet's coded verses. The harem's rivalries, with their fan snaps and dream sachets, thrive on such leaks, and you're catching Xiao Yue's scribbled note, detailing Zhao's flattery of the emperor, a weapon sharper than the merchant wife's jealous glares. You're thinking of medieval Europe's court spies less tied to beds. Here, it's intimate, a silk-wrapped dagger, and you're marveling at how Xiao Yue wields silence like a blade. You're feeling the hall's cool marble, the incense's haze, and you're wondering how Zhao's trust blinds her to this threat. You're recalling the courtesan's calculated charm. Here, it's betrayal, no less potent. The stakes are
Lethal. You're hearing whispers of past betrayals, concubines banished, maids flogged, when bedroom secrets like Xu Ling's adulterous tryst reached the wrong ears, a fate harsher than the virgin bride's public gaze or the same sex. Scholars' quiet disgrace.
You're sensing Xiao Yue's risk if caught. Her ear charm won't save her from exile or worse, yet her reward could lift her family from poverty, unlike the fertility couple's private prayers. The Sunu Jing's bedroom arts guiding Zhao's night are Xiao Yue's to exploit. Her notes a map of power, and you're catching her slip the scroll to Mei Lin's ally, a silent vow of war. The palace's eunuchs guard with keys. Here, it's ears, and you're wondering if Zhao's charm will outlast this leak. You're brushing a silk curtain, its softness a lie, and you're curious if Xiao Yue's gamble will crown or crush her. You're thinking of Shu's lotus feet, beauty born of pain. Here, it's power, born of treachery, a fiercer cost. The broader world feeds this intrigue. You're passing other palace halls where maids and scribes eavesdrop, their ear, charms glinting, a grander echo of the matchmaker's gossip, or the pleasure house's traded smiles where secrets are currency. You're hearing a courtier's rumor of a fallen consort, his voice low, and you're realizing bedroom spies are public players like the ghost lover myths, where trust's a casualty. The Taoist temple's yin-yang wisdom, with its bedroom balance, offers no shield for Zhao's secrets, but Confucian duty, loyalty, lineage fuels this betrayal. And you're seeing how spies weave the palace's web, whisper by whisper. You're thinking of the harem's rivalries, a louder game. Here, it's a quieter doom, and you're feeling the palace's pulse, a rhythm of desire and deceit. The emperor departs, and you're slipping out, Xiao Yue's ear charm chiming as she melts into the shadows, her note a spark that could burn Zhao's favor. You're carrying the hum of her world, silk, secrets, betrayal, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's courts. Her espionage is a blade, sharp as Xu Ling's adulterous fire, or the virgin bride's burden, promising more stories of passion's treacherous edge. You're ready to step deeper into this world, to see how aging lovers found quiet bonds, a warmth as soft as this palace's fading glow. You're walking into the city's dusk, the corridor's incense fading, eager to chase love's next twist. You're gliding out of the palace's silk-draped corridor, the faint chime of Xiao Yue's ear charm and her treacherous note fading as Luoyang's spring dusk wraps you in the scent of cooling lotus ponds and distant temple chants. The sting of bedroom espionage, a sharp contrast to the adulterous alley's reckless fire or the virgin bride's trembling burden. The city's pulse thrums, lanterns glow, a street flute wails, but you're drawn to a quiet village on Luoyang's edge, where an elderly couple, their hands weathered by decades of toil, share a simple meal under a willow's shade, their bond a gentle warmth woven through years of shared beds. In ancient China, aging lovers found quiet, enduring love, far from the pleasure house's gilded trade, or the harem's scheming fans, a love tempered by time and Confucian duty. You're brushing past a creaky bamboo fence, the air soft with millet and memory, as you dive into the world of seasoned love, where passion simmers low and every touch carries a lifetime's weight. Mainstream history tells us that in Han Dynasty China, elderly couples, bound by Confucian ideals of lifelong loyalty and family harmony, often deepened their bonds in later years, their shared struggles, raising heirs, surviving harvests, forging a love that outlasted youth's fire, as seen in family records and filial piety texts. You're watching the couple, old Zhang and Mei Fang, sit on a worn bench, her hand steady as she spoons millet porridge into his bowl, his smile crinkling eyes that still see her as the bride of decades past. Their intimacy, unlike the festival's flirty sparks or the same-sex scholars' hidden tokens, is a quiet constant, rooted in duty but blossomed into devotion, and you're feeling the yard's peaceful hum, their bond a soft anchor in time. You're catching the scent of boiled millet, earthy and warm, and you're wondering how love endures in a village shaped by hardship and honor. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some elderly couples exchanged longevity locks, small bronze clasps, etched with cranes, believing they'd bind their souls through old age and beyond, a charm as tender as the adulterer's shadow mirror or the pleasure house's jade teardrops. You're spotting a clasp pinned to Mei Fang's shawl, its patina worn, and you're smiling, imagining it's less magic than a quiet vow, like the peasant's red thread knot. Historians still argue whether these locks were romantic or ritualistic. Tokens, but you're betting they're a spark of forever, especially when Zhang's fingers brush it fondly. You're sidestepping a scattered grain, its crunch fleeting, and you're hoping your own bonds don't need such metal ties. There hovels a haven of memory. You're watching Zhang tease Mei Fang about her old wedding veil, their laughter a contrast to the Taoist couple's qi harmony, or the harem's venomous rivalries, their love a tapestry of shared harvests, lost children, and quiet nights. You're sensing their ease, no matchmaker's ledgers or fertility idols needed, unlike the virgin bride's pressured night or the fertility couple's urgent prayers. The Confucian code, that scholar's iron cage, shaped their youth, sons for lineage, duty to clan. But now, with heirs grown, their bed is theirs, a space for comfort, not conquest. You're thinking of medieval Europe's aging couples, often estranged. Here, it's a partnership, and you're marveling at how they find joy in routine. You're catching the willows sway, the benches creak, and you're wondering how their love outlasted life's grind. You're recalling the courtesan's fleeting allure. Here, it's a bond, no less potent. Their intimacy is subtle but deep. You're picturing their reed mat bed, no Sunu Jing arts needed, unlike the pleasure house's traded skills or the apothecary's fiery brew, where touch is memory, her hand on his back, his arm around her waist, a warmth that echoes. The peasant couple's practicality but glows with time's polish. You're hearing Mei Fang hum a lullaby, once for their sons, now for him, and you're sensing their trust, a defiance of the harem's betrayals or the adulterous poet's deadly risk. The village expects their devotion, filial piety binds them to their grown children's homes, but their quiet nights are a rebellion, love for love's sake, and you're catching Zhang's grin, a spark of youth. You're brushing a willow leaf from your cloak, its softness lingering, and you're curious if their bond holds secrets beyond the years. You're thinking of Shu's lotus feet, beauty born of pain. Here, it's love, born of endurance, a gentler cost. The broader world honors their bond. You're passing other village huts, where aging couples tend hearths, their longevity locks glinting, a humbler echo of the emperor's harem or the matchmaker's deals, where love serves lineage but lingers in old age. You're hearing a storyteller spin tales of loyal elders, his voice warm, and you're realizing their devotion is public pride, like the festival's flirty sparks where love's a legacy. The Taoist temple's yin-yang wisdom with its bedroom balance blesses their harmony, and Confucian duty, ancestors, heirs, celebrates their life's work. And you're seeing how aging love threads the village's heart, thread by thread. You're thinking of the harem's scheming fans, a colder game. Here, it's a warmth, steady and true, and you're feeling the village's pulse, a rhythm of duty and devotion. The meal ends and you're slipping away. Mei Fang's longevity, lock glinting as Zhang helps her rise, their steps slow but sure. You're carrying the hum of their world, millet, memory, love, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's hearths. Their bonds aglow, gentle as the festival's sparks or the courtesan's charm, promising more stories of passions.
Enduring edge. You're ready to step deeper into this world, to see how dynastic shifts, reshaped bedroom customs, a change as bold as their quiet love. You're walking into the village's dusk, the willow's shade fading, eager to chase loves.
Next twist. You're slipping away from the village's willow-shaded yard, the soft clink of Mei Fang's longevity lock and the elderly couple's weathered warmth fading as Luoyang's spring dusk wraps you in the scent of ripening barley and distant temple smoke, their seasoned love, a gentle glow against the Confucian cage that bound the palace spy's treacherous whispers or the adulterous poet's deadly scarf. The city's pulse thrums, ox carts creak, a street singer's voice drifts, but you're drawn to a bustling palace hall, its jade pillars echoing with news of a new dynasty's rise, where bedroom customs shift under the weight of fresh imperial decrees. In ancient China, dynastic changes reshaped passion's rules, blending old Confucian duties with new political games, far from the pleasure house's gilded trade or the festival's flirty knots. You're brushing past a bronze phoenix statue, the air thick with intrigue and lotus incense, as you dive into the world of dynastic shifts, where sex is a political pawn and every bed reflects a new reign's heart. Mainstream history tells us that in ancient China, dynastic transitions, like the shift from Han to Wei in the 3rd century CE, brought changes to court life, including bedroom customs, as new rulers imposed their ideals on marriage, harems, and even love, often blending Confucian tradition with political strategy as seen in records like the Sangguo Ji. You're standing in a gilded hall watching a new emperor, a Wei ruler, receive tributes from vassals, his gaze lingering on a consort whose presence signals a shift, fewer concubines, stricter harem rules to project moral strength after Han's decadence. These changes ripple from palace beds to peasant hut, and you're feeling the room's charged hum, the air heavy with reform's weight. You're catching the scent of lotus incense, sweet but sharp, and you're wondering how love bends under
a dynasty's new script in a city of silk and secrets. Here's a quirky tidbit.
Some Wei consorts wore loyalty veils, gauzy silk embroidered with cranes, believing they'd bind their fidelity to the emperor, a charm as symbolic as the elderly couple's longevity lock or the adulterer's shadow mirror. You're spotting a veil on the consort's shoulders, its threads glinting, and you're smirking, imagining it's less magic than a public vow, like the harem's dream sachet. Historians still argue whether these veils were devotion or propaganda, but you're betting they're a new regime's flex, especially when the consort's bow is stiff with duty. You're sidestepping a spilled wine cup, its stickiness fleeting, and you're hoping your own loyalties don't need such silken props. The hall's a stage for new rules. You're watching the emperor, his robe starkly simple to signal reform, decree a leaner harem, a contrast to the Han's sprawling beds we glimpsed with Lady Zhao's rivalries, aiming to curb the excess that fueled palace spies like Xiao Yue. You're sensing the consort's tension. Fewer women mean fiercer competition, their bedroom roles now tied to political alliances, unlike the Taoist couple's qi harmony or the peasant's tender red thread love. The Confucian code, that scholar's iron cage, still demands heirs and loyalty, but the Wei's stricter moral tone, less lust, more duty, reshapes their knights, and you're catching a eunuch's nod, his keys tighter since the dynasty's shift. You're thinking of medieval Europe's dynastic marriages, political but less ritualized. Here, it's a Confucian chessboard, and you're marveling at how beds mirror thrones. You're feeling the hall's cool jade, the incense's haze, and you're wondering how consorts navigate this tighter web. You're recalling the courtesan's seductive pipa. Here, it's a decree, no less commanding. The shift ripples beyond the palace. You're picturing the emperor's new edicts, fewer concubines allowed for nobles, stricter matchmaker rules, reaching Luoyang's merchant homes, where men like the polygamous silk trader face pressure to trim their wives, unlike the merchant wives' tense unity or the fertility couple's prayers. You're hearing whispers of Sunu Jing manuals being censored, their arts too bold for Wei's austere taste, a clamp on the passion that fueled the forbidden lovers' tryst. The new dynasty's push for virtue echoes the virgin bride's chastity burden, but now it's state-enforced, and you're sensing the city's unease as lovers, scholars, peasants adjust to beds bound by fresh laws. You're brushing a phoenix feather from the statue, its softness a lie, and you're curious if passion will bow or break under this rain. You're thinking of Shu's lotus feet, beauty born of pain. Here, it's love, reshaped by power, a sharper cost. The broader world feels the change. You're passing city gates, where vassals spread news of Wei's reforms. Their talk of leaner harems, a humbler echo of the palace's new beds, or the matchmaker's deals, where sex serves dynasty, not heart. You're hearing a street bard sing of virtuous reigns, his voice cautious, and you're realizing these shifts are public theater, like the pleasure houses trade where passions are policy. The Taoist temple's yin-yang wisdom with its bedroom balance clashes with Wei's moral clamp, but Confucian duty, ancestors, order, binds the new rules, and you're seeing how dynasties thread the town's heart, decree by decree. You're thinking of the elderly couple's quiet bond, a warmer love. Here, it's a colder game, and you're feeling the city's pulse, a rhythm of reform and restraint. The tribute ends and you're slipping out, the consort's loyalty veil shimmering. As she bows to the emperor, her eyes guarded with new ambition. You're carrying the hum of their world, silk, power, desire, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's courts. The dynasty's shifts a blade, sharp as the spy's whispers or the virgin bride's burden, promising more stories of passion's reshaped edge. You're ready to step deeper into this world, to see how foreign brides stirred desire, a spark as bold as this new reign's decrees. You're walking into the city's dusk, the palace's glow fading, eager to chase
love's next twist.
You're slipping out of the palace's grand hall, the shimmer of the consort's loyalty veil and the emperor's austere decrees fading as Luoyang's spring dusk wraps you in the scent of blossoming apricots and distant temple bells. The Wei dynasty's new bedroom rules a sharp shift from the elderly couple's quiet longevity lock or the palace spy's treacherous whispers. The city's pulse thrums, lanterns bob, a night vendor's cry echoes, but you're drawn to a lavish banquet in the palace's inner court, where a foreign bride, her exotic silks swirling, captivates the emperor with a dance that stirs whispers of desire. In ancient China, foreign brides brought new passions to the court, blending alien customs with Confucian beds, far from the pleasure house's gilded trade or the same-sex scholars' hidden tokens. You're brushing past a jade peacock screen, the air thick with saffron and intrigue, as you dive into the world of foreign brides, where sex is a diplomatic dance and every gesture reshapes the palace's heart. Mainstream history tells us that in Han and later dynasties, foreign brides, often princesses from nomadic tribes like the Xiongnu or Central Asian kingdoms, were married to Chinese emperors to seal alliances, their exotic beauty and customs influencing court life and bedroom practices as noted in records like the Book of Han. You're watching the bride, Princess Kulan, a Xiongnu noble, sway to a haunting flute, her turquoise veil and silver bangles glinting, her movements bolder than the Han consort's restrained grace. These women, diplomatic pawns, often reshaped harem dynamics, and you're feeling the hall's electric hum, her dance a spark that challenges Confucian norms. You're catching the scent of her spiced perfume, sharp and unfamiliar, and you're wondering how foreign desire stirs a court bound by tradition. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some foreign brides wore star combs, silver hairpieces studded with turquoise, believing they'd channel celestial favor to charm the emperor, a talisman as potent as the Wei consort's loyalty veil or the adulterer's shadow mirror. You're spotting a comb in Kulan's hair, its stones gleaming, and you're smirking, imagining it's less magic than a dazzling prop, like the courtesan's phoenix bells. Historians still argue whether these combs were cultural imports or diplomatic flair, but you're betting they're a blend, especially when Kulan's twirl draws the emperor's gaze. You're sidestepping a spilled rice wine cup, its stickiness fleeting, and you're hoping your own charm doesn't need such starry props. The banquet's a stage for exotic allure. You're watching Kulan's dance, her steps fluid and unrestrained, a contrast to Lady Zhao's calculated fan snaps or the Taoist couple's qi harmony, her foreign grace igniting whispers among consorts like Mei Lin, whose eyes narrow with rivalry. You're sensing her power. Her Xiongnu lineage secures peace on the northern border, but her bedroom allure could shift the harem's balance, unlike the festival's flirty sparks or the peasant's red thread love. The Confucian code, that scholar's iron cage, demands her submission, but her bold dance, perhaps spiced by Su Nu Jing-like arts from her homeland, defies it. And you're catching the emperor's smile, a sign she's rewriting the palace's script. You're thinking of medieval Europe's foreign queens, often mistrusted. Here, it's desire, not just diplomacy, that binds, and you're marveling at how Kulan navigates this silken web. You're feeling the hall's warmth, the flute's wail, and you're wondering how she'll fare in this court of knives. You're recalling the merchant wife's bedroom sway. Here, it's a dance no less potent. Her influence is a delicate risk. You're hearing courtiers murmur of Kulan's barbarian ways, her preference for mare's milk, her unveiled laughter, a challenge to the way's moral clamp, unlike the virgin bride's chastity burden or the fertility couple's prayers. You're sensing her strategy, her nights with the emperor, blending Xiongnu passion with Han restraint, a fusion that could birth heirs or enemies, echoing the harem's rivalries, but with higher stakes. The palace's eunuchs, like Chen with his keys, watch her closely, and you're catching a maid, perhaps Xiao Yue's ally, scribbling notes, a spy's work to curb her rise. The matchmaker's ledgers, binding Luo Yang's beds, pale beside this diplomatic bed, and you're wondering if Kulan's star comb will outshine their schemes. You're brushing a silk banner, its embroidery fine, and you're curious if her allure will secure peace or spark war. You're thinking of shoes, lotus feet, beauty born of pain. Here, it's power born of difference, a bolder cost. The broader world feels her ripple. You're passing court gates where envoys discuss new alliances, their talk of foreign brides a grander echo of the matchmaker's deals or the poet's coded verses, where desire serves empire, not heart. You're hearing a street bard sing,
Of desert roses, his voice dreamy, and you're realizing foreign brides a public fascination, like the pleasure house's trade, where beauty's a currency.
The Taoist temple's yin-yang wisdom with its bedroom balance welcomes her exotic qi, but Confucian duty, ancestors' order, resists her difference, and you're seeing how foreign brides thread the court's heart, dance by dance. You're thinking of the elderly couple's quiet bond, a warmer love. Here, it's a diplomatic fire, and you're feeling the city's pulse, a rhythm of tradition and transformation. The dance ends and you're slipping out, Kulan's star comb glinting. As she bows to the emperor, her veil a defiant swirl. You're carrying the hum of her world, silk, diplomacy, desire, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's courts. Her allures aflame, bold as the spy's whispers or the virgin bride's burden, promising more stories of passion's
exotic edge. You're ready to step deeper into this world to see how medical texts guided bedroom health, a wisdom as precise as Kulan's twirl. You're walking into the city's dusk, the banquet's glow fading, eager to chase loves.
Next twist. You're gliding away from the palace's lavish banquet, the swirl of Princess Kulan's star comb and her exotic dance fading as Luoyang's spring dusk wraps you in the scent of cooling stone paths and distant peach blossoms. Her diplomatic allure a bold spark against the Confucian cage that bound the elderly couple's quiet lock, or the palace spy's treacherous notes. The city's pulse thrums, lanterns flicker, a night peddler's cry echoes, but you're drawn to a physician's modest study, its walls lined with scrolls and herb jars, where an old healer scribes advice on bedroom health, his brush tracing, secrets of love and longevity. In ancient China, medical texts guided intimate practices, blending science with spirituality to nurture desire and heirs, far from the pleasure house's gilded trade or the adulterous poet's deadly scarf. You're brushing past a bamboo curtain, the air thick with ginseng and ink, as you dive into the world of medical wisdom, where sex is a prescription and every act a path to balance. Mainstream history tells us that in Han Dynasty China, medical Texts like the Huangdi Nei Jing and Sunu Jing offer detailed advice on sexual health, viewing intimacy as a vital act to balance qi, life energy, promote longevity, and ensure fertility, integrating Taoist principles with practical remedies for couples across classes. You're watching the physician Master Hu, his hands steady as he scribes a scroll for a merchant couple, prescribing specific positions and timings to boost their chances of conceiving a son, his voice calm but firm. These texts, unlike the poet's coded verses or the harem scheming fans, were clinical yet sacred, and you're feeling the study's quiet focus, the scroll's weight a guide for life itself. You're catching the scent of dried licorice root, bitter and sharp, and you're wondering how love thrives under a physician's pen in a city bound by duty. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some physicians advised couples to sleep with moonstone pillows, smooth rocks etched with lunar phases, believing they'd align their qi with celestial cycles for optimal bedroom vigor, a charm as curious as Kulan's star comb or the adulterer's shadow mirror. You're spotting a carved stone,
on whose desk its surface glinting, and you're smirking, imagining it's less magic than a placebo, like the festival's love knots.
Historians still argue whether these pillows were medical tools or symbolic aids, but you're betting they're a blend, especially when Hu's nod suggests he's seen them work. You're sidestepping a spilled herb jar, its dust fleeting, and you're hoping your own health doesn't need such rocky props. The study's a sanctuary of wisdom. You're reading over Hu's shoulder, the scroll detailing how men should conserve yang through restraint, echoing the Taoist couple's qi dance, while women's yin thrives on connection, a balance that contrasts with the virgin bride's pressured night or the pleasure house's traded allure. You're sensing Hu's care, his advice tailored, morning trysts for vitality, ginseng tea for stamina, a far cry from the harem's rivalries or the peasant's red thread tenderness. The Confucian code, that scholar's iron cage, endorses this guidance tying sex to heirs and health, and you're catching Hu's murmur about avoiding excess, a warning for the merchant's eager nod. You're thinking of medieval Europe's humoral medicine, less tied to love. Here, it's intimate, a silk-wrapped science, and you're marveling at how Hu's brush shapes passion's pulse. You're feeling the room's warmth, the ink's tang, and you're wondering how couples follow this script in their reed mat beds. You're recalling the courtesan's seductive pippa. Here, it's a scroll, no less potent. The advice is precise but human. You're hearing Hu prescribe a diet, lotus seeds, walnuts, to boost the merchant's vigor, alongside positions like clouds and rain from the Sunu Jing, a nod to the forbidden lover's passionate tryst, but clinical, aimed at conception, like the fertility couple's idle prayers. You're picturing the couple's nights guided by Hu's scroll, their love a blend of duty and desire, unlike the harem's scheming fans or the same-sex scholars' hidden glances. The physician warns of risks. Overindulgence drains qi, a threat to longevity. And you're sensing the merchant's unease, his wife's blush, their trust in Hu, a bridge to hope. The palace's eunuchs guarded beds with keys. Here, it's wisdom, and you're wondering if Hu's words will spark a child or just faith. You're brushing a scroll's edge, its paper crisp, and you're curious if their love will bloom under this regimen. You're thinking of Shu's lotus feet, beauty born of pain. Here, it's health, born of discipline, a steadier cost. The broader world seeks this guidance. You're passing other physicians' shops, their herb jars glowing, where couples buy scrolls or brews, a humbler echo of the emperor's harem or the matchmaker's deals, where sex serves lineage and life. You're hearing a street healer hawk vigor tonics, his voice brash, and you're realizing bedroom health is public trade, like the apothecary's fiery potions, where desire's a currency. The Taoist temple's yin-yang wisdom, with
its bedroom balance, grounds these texts, and Confucian duty, ancestors, heirs, blesses their aim. And you're seeing how medical wisdom threads the town's beds, page by page.
You're thinking of the harem's rivalries, a colder game. Here, it's a warmer science, and you're feeling the city's pulse, a rhythm of duty and vitality. The session ends and you're slipping out, Hu's moonstone pillow glinting as he hands the scroll to the merchant, his nod a quiet promise. You're carrying the hum of his world, ink, herbs, desire, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's heart. His wisdom's a guide, steady as Kulan's exotic dance, or the elderly couple's bond, promising more stories of passion's healthy edge. You're ready to step deeper into this world, to see how ancient desires echo in modern love, a spark as enduring as Hu's scroll. You're walking into the city's dusk, the study's glow fading, eager to chase love's next twist. You're stepping out of the physician's herb-scented study, the glint of Master Hu's moonstone pillow and his scroll of bedroom wisdom fading as Luoyang's spring dusk wraps you in the scent of cooling rice fields and distant temple lanterns. The medical guide's precise passion, a steady contrast to the foreign bride's exotic dance or the palace spy's treacherous whispers. The city's pulse thrums, night vendors shout, a flute's wail drifts, but you're drawn to a quiet tea house, its bamboo walls alive with the chatter of merchants and poets, where tales of ancient love spark thoughts of modern romance. In ancient China, the dance of desire bound by Confucian duty, ignited by Taoist harmony, echoes in today's world, shaping how we navigate love and intimacy. You're slipping into a corner seat, the air soft with jasmine tea and memory, as you dive into the world of ancient love's modern echoes, where passion's past pulses in our hearts and every bond carries a timeless spark. Mainstream history tells us that ancient Chinese views on sex, rooted in Confucian family duty, Taoist key balance, and medical wisdom like the Huangdi Neijing, influenced East Asian cultural norms with echoes in modern practices like arranged marriages, holistic health, and romantic ideals, as seen in studies of Chinese diaspora communities. You're sipping tea, watching a young couple at a nearby table, their shy glances and clasped hands a mirror of the festival's flirty love knots, their modern date tinged with the same duty to family we saw in the matchmaker's ledgers. These ancient threads, honor, balance, desire, still weave through today's relationships, and you're feeling the tea house's warm hum, their bond a bridge across centuries. You're catching the scent of jasmine tea, floral and sharp, and you're wondering how ancient China's bedrooms shape our own in a world of apps and freedom. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some modern Chinese couples burn harmony candles, etched with yin-yang symbols, during proposals, believing they'll align their energies, a nod to the Taoist couple's jade pillow or the fertility couple's seed amulet. You're spotting a candle flickering on the couple's table, its wax pooling, and you're smiling, imagining it's less magic than a romantic echo, like the poet's heart ink verses. Historians still argue whether these candles are cultural holdovers or commercial trends, but you're betting they're a spark of tradition, especially when the man's nervous grin mirrors the merchant's apothecary visit. You're sidestepping, a spilled tea leaf, its stickiness fleeting, and you're hoping your own romance doesn't need such waxy props. The tea house mirrors ancient beds. You're watching the couple debate their future, jobs, parents' approval, a nod to the Confucian code that caged the virgin bride's night or the matchmaker's dowry deals, their love tempered by family expectations, unlike the adulterous poet's reckless fire. You're sensing their balance, his hand steadying hers, a modern echo of the Su Nu Jing's yin-yang harmony we saw in Master Hu's scroll, where intimacy nurtures health, not just passion. The harem's rivalries, with their scheming fans, feel distant. Here, it's a quieter negotiation, and you're catching her playful nudge, a spark of the festival's flirty freedom. You're thinking of medieval Europe's courtly love, less practical. Here, it's grounded, a blend of duty and desire, and you're marveling at how ancient China's rules linger in their date. You're feeling the room's buzz, the tease, steam, and you're wondering how their love navigates today's world. You're recalling the courtesan's seductive pipa. Here, it's a smile, no less potent. The echoes are subtle, but deep. You're picturing their future bed, perhaps guided by wellness apps or holistic tips, a nod to the apothecary's fiery brew, or the elderly couple's enduring touch, where intimacy is health, not just heat. You're hearing them mention a family, shrine, a modern altar for ancestors, like the fertility couple's clay idol, ensuring their love honors the past, unlike the same-sex scholars' hidden glances. The Confucian duty to parents, seen in the merchant wives' tense unity, persists. In their talk of filial piety, but their laughter defies the virgin bride's burden, a freer spark. The pleasure house's gilded cage, with its jade teardrops, contrasts with their open bond, yet the pressure to marry well echoes the matchmaker's tea house, and you're wondering if their hearts will bend or break under tradition's weight. You're brushing a bamboo mat, its texture rough, and you're curious how ancient wisdom shapes their modern nights. You're thinking of Shu's lotus feet, beauty born of pain. Here, it's love born of balance, a softer cost. The broader world carries these threads. You're passing city streets where couples stroll, their dates blending apps with parental nods, a humbler echo of the emperor's harem or the forbidden lover's tryst, where desire serves heart and heritage. You're hearing a pop song on a vendor's radio, its lyrics of fated love, a nod to the poet's coded verses, and you're realizing ancient China's passions are public dreams, like the festival's sparks where love's a legacy. The Taoist temple's yin-yang wisdom, with its bedroom balance, lives in modern wellness trends, and Confucian duty, family, honor, grounds their choices. And you're seeing how ancient beds thread today's hearts, spark by spark. You're thinking of the harem's rivalries, a colder game. Here, it's a warmer dance, and you're feeling the city's pulse, a rhythm of past and present. The couple rises and you're slipping out, their harmony candle flickering as they share. A final smile, their steps light with hope. You're carrying the hum of their world. Tea, tradition, desire, a pulse that thrums through ancient China's legacy. Their bond's a bridge, timeless as Kulan's dance or Hu's scroll, promising one last story of love's enduring edge. You're ready to step deeper into this world, to reflect on how China's past shapes our heart. A glow as bold as this couple's spark. You're walking into the city's dusk, the tea house's glow fading, eager to chase love's final twist. You're lingering in the tea house's fading warmth, the flicker of the couple's harmony candle, and their modern love fading as Luoyang's spring dusk wraps you in the scent of jasmine tea and cooling cobblestones, their tender bond a timeless echo of ancient China's passions, from the festival's flirty knots to the physician's moonstone wisdom. The city's pulse thrums, lanterns dim, a night flute sighs. But you're standing in a quiet garden, its willows swaying, reflecting on how the desires of Han Dynasty beds, bound by Confucian duty, sparked by Taoist harmony, pulse through every heart today, weaving a legacy of love that outlives silk and scrolls. You're brushing past a lotus pond, the air soft with moonlight and memory, as you weave the threads of this journey, duty, desire, defiance, into a tapestry that binds ancient China's heart to your own, a glow that endures beyond the city's ancient gates. Mainstream history tells us that ancient Chinese views on sex, rooted in Confucian lineage, Taoist balance, and medical wisdom like the Sunu Jing, shaped cultural ideals of love, family, and health that persist in modern East. Asian values, from filial piety to holistic intimacy, as seen in global studies of Chinese heritage. You're gazing at the pond, its ripples catching starlight, a mirror of the merchant wife's heartlock sway, the courtesan's phoenix bells, and the elderly couple's longevity lock, each a thread in a legacy that lives in today's weddings, wellness and whispered vows. This journey through harems, huts, and hidden trysts reveals love's universal fight, and you're feeling the garden's calm, a hum that ties past to present. You're catching the scent of lotus blooms, delicate and fleeting, and you're marveling at how ancient desires light our modern hearts. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some modern Chinese couples gift eternity knots, red cords tied in endless loops, at weddings, believing they'll bind their love forever, a nod to the peasant's red thread charm or the adulterer's shadow mirror. You're picturing a knot from the tea house couple's future, its cords vibrant, and you're smiling, imagining it's a spark of ancient hope, like the poet's heart ink verses. Historians still argue whether these knots are tradition or modern romance, but you're betting they're a bridge, tying the fertility couple's prayers to today's vows. You're sidestepping a fallen petal, its softness gone, and you're hoping your own love weaves such enduring threads. The garden holds every story. You're seeing the virgin bride's chastity fan trembling under duty in modern pressures. To honor family, a softer echo of the matchmaker's ledgers. The harem's rivalries with their dream sachets live in today's ambitions, tempered by the Taoist couple's qi harmony that inspires wellness apps. The forbidden lover's shadow, tokens reckless and bold, pulse in secret crushes, while the same-sex scholars' cloud tokens whisper in quiet pride, freer now. The pleasure house's jade teardrops, heavy with pain, mirror modern struggles for agency, unlike the elderly couple's quiet bench, a warmth that endures in shared sunsets. The apothecary's phoenix brew, fiery and hopeful, sparks in date night. Spices and Kulan's star comb dance glints in global love's embrace, each a thread from Luoyang's beds to yours. You're feeling the willows sway, the ponds ripple, and you're tracing these sparks in your own heart. A legacy as alive as the city's hum. You're recalling Shu's lotus feet, beauty born of pain. Here, it's love, born of time, a gentler glow. The legacy's a living pulse. You're picturing modern beds, where couples navigate apps, parents and dreams, their intimacy shaped by Master Hugh's scroll, balancing health and heart, unlike the harem's scheming fans or the
adulterous poet's deadly risk.
You're hearing a pop song's echo, its lyrics of fated love a nod to the festival's flirty sparks, and you're sensing the Confucian duty, family, honor, that lingers in their choices, softened by the Taoist yin-yang wisdom of the physician's words. The palace spy's ear charms, sharp with betrayal, fade in trust's light, while the courtesan's peeper strums in bold self-love, a defiance that outshines the pleasure house's cage. You're brushing a willow branch, its leaves whispering, and you're wondering how your own love carries these ancient threads. You're thinking of the ghost lover's spirit silk, a spectral bond. Here, it's a universal spark binding us all. The world carries this flame. You're passing city gates where lovers walk, their bonds blending past and present, a humbler echo of the emperor's harem or the matchmaker's tea where desire weaves heart and heritage. You're hearing a street poet's verse, its rhythm timeless, and you're realizing ancient China's love is our shared dream, like the elderly couple's bench where passion endures. The Taoist temple's balance, the Confucian call to duty, thread through modern hearts, and you're seeing how Luoyang's beds light our own, spark by spark. You're feeling the city's pulse, a rhythm of love's eternal fight, and you're carrying its glow, a warmth that outlives dusk. Now let Luoyang's lanterns soften, its willows and lotus ponds fading into a gentle haze, like stars blooming. In a twilight sky, picture yourself sinking into a warm, endless meadow, each blade of grass a story. Kulan's dance, Meifang's lock, Lan Yu's veil, woven into a tapestry of love that cradles you. Their world was bound by duty, sparked by desire, but their hearts were fierce, and you carry that glow now, soft and steady, a warmth that soothes without burning. Feel your breath slow, your hands relax, as ancient China's passions melt into a whisper of resilience, a promise that your own loves like theirs will endure. You're safe here, wrapped in the hum of their defiance, where heart and hope outshine any cage. Let the stars hold you, their light a vow that your battles, like theirs, will yield to dawn. Close your eyes, drift, and let the night cradle you, gentle as a love reborn until morning calls. Sweet dreams.